Welcome, dear listeners, to the dark and mysterious world of Macbeth, a tale woven by the brilliant bard himself, William Shakespeare. In this gripping journey of ambition, power, and betrayal, we delve into the heart of Scotland, where fate and free will dance a deadly waltz. As you embark on this thrilling ride, prepare to meet Macbeth, a noble warrior whose heart is ensnared by prophecy, and his formidable lady whose ambition knows no bounds. Picture the windswept moors, hear the echo of the witch's cryptic chants, and feel the weight of a crown that comes at a dreadful cost. This is a story where the line between reality and the supernatural blurs, leaving you on the edge of your seat, longing for more. If this tale of treachery and destiny captures your imagination, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing timeless classics like Macbeth to life, one captivating chapter at a time. So, sit back, relax, and let the echoes of Shakespeare's words transport you to a world where every choice comes with a shadow. Act 1. In an ancient and mystical realm where the skies growled and the winds danced with fury, 3 peculiar figures emerged from the shadows of the stormy landscape. The air was thick with the crackle of thunder and the jagged flashes of lightning, painting the scene in eerie strokes of light and shadow. These were no ordinary figures. They were the witches, keepers of secrets, weavers of fate. The first witch, with eyes that gleamed like polished obsidian, peered into the tumultuous heavens. "When shall we 3 meet again?" she inquired, her voice a whisper that carried through the roaring elements. "In thunder, lightning, or in rain?" The second witch, her face a map of untold tales, replied with a knowing smirk. "When the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won." The third witch, whose presence seemed to blur the line between reality and dreams, nodded in agreement. "That will be ere the set of sun." The first witch, her curiosity piqued, asked, "Where the place?" "Upon the heath," the second witch declared with certainty. "There to meet with Macbeth," the third witch added, the name lingering on her lips like an incantation. A sudden meow echoed through the storm, and the first witch called out, "I come, Grey Malkin." "Paddock calls," the second witch responded, her voice echoing the croak of her familiar. "Anon," the third witch concluded, and with a final chant, they spoke as one. "Fair is foul, and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air." And with that they vanished into the mist, leaving the air charged with their enigmatic promise. Meanwhile, in a camp near Forres, the atmosphere was tense. The sounds of battle rang in the distance, underscoring the gravity of the moment. King Duncan, regal and commanding, stood surrounded by his sons, Malcolm and Donalbain, and the noble Lennox, their eyes fixed on a figure staggering towards them, a soldier, bleeding and weary from the fray. Duncan, his voice resonating with concern, asked, "What bloody man is that? He can report, as seemeth by his plight, of the revolt, the newest state." Malcolm, recognizing the soldier, stepped forward. "This is the sergeant who, like a good and hardy soldier, fought against my captivity. Hail, brave friend. Say to the king the knowledge of the broil as thou didst leave it." The soldier, his voice strained but determined, recounted. Doubtful it stood, as 2 spent swimmers that do cling together and choke their art. He painted a picture of chaos and valour, of Macdonald's treachery and Macbeth's unyielding bravery until he could speak no more, his wounds demanding attention. "O valiant cousin, worthy gentleman," praised Duncan, his heart swelling with pride for the fearless deeds of Macbeth. The soldier continued, describing how the battle raged on, how the Norwegian lord took his chance to strike again, only to be met with the ferocity of Macbeth and Banquo, warriors whose courage was unmatched. "But I am faint, my gashes cry for help," he admitted, his strength waning. "Go, get him surgeons," Duncan commanded, his words a balm for the soldier's suffering. As the wounded man was led away, Ross and Angus arrived, their presence a sign of news yet to be shared. "Who comes here?" Duncan inquired, his gaze shifting to the new arrivals. Malcolm identified them, the worthy Thane of Ross. Ross, his demeanour urgent, wasted no time. "God save the king!" he exclaimed, his loyalty evident in every word. Duncan, eager for news, asked, "Whence cam'st thou, worthy Thane?" "From Fife, great king," Ross reported, bringing tales of the Norwegian banners and the treachery of the Thane of Cawdor. But his news concluded with triumph, as Macbeth's victory turned the tide of the battle. "Great happiness," Duncan declared, his spirit lifted by the victory. Ross conveyed the terms of the defeated Norwegian king, and Duncan, seizing the moment, decreed, "No more that Thane of Cawdor shall deceive our bosom interest. Go pronounce his present death, and with his former title greet Macbeth." "I'll see it done," Ross assured, ready to carry out the king's will. As they departed, the stage was set for a new chapter, a chapter that would unfold under the shadow of a prophecy. Back on the heath, the witches gathered once more, their voices a melody of mischief and mystery. "Where hast thou been, sister?" the first witch inquired. "Killing swine," the second witch replied, her tone casual as if discussing the weather. The first witch shared her tale of a sailor's wife who dared deny her request, promising vengeance in a voice as soft as silk yet sharp as a dagger. "But in a sieve I'll thither sail, and like a rat without a tail I'll do, and I'll do." "I'll give thee a wind," the second witch offered, sealing their pact with a gust of power. As the witches exchanged their dark gifts, a drumbeat reached their ears, a herald of Macbeth's approach. A drum, Macbeth doth come," the third witch chanted, and the three linked hands, their incantation a dance of fate. Now Macbeth and Banquo approached, weary from battle yet alive with a sense of destiny. "So foul and fair a day I have not seen," Macbeth mused, the words falling from his lips like a prophecy of their own. Banquo, his eyes catching sight of the strange figures before them, questioned their nature. How far is called to forest? What are these, so withered and so wild in their attire, that look not like the inhabitants of the earth, and yet are on't? The witches, unmoved by the inquiries, stood silent, their presence a riddle wrapped in enigma. The stage was set, the players in place, and the threads of fate began to weave their intricate pattern, one that would forever alter the tapestry of their world. Act 1, Part 2. On a wind-swept moor under a sky bruised with ominous clouds, Macbeth and Banquo, two valiant Scottish warriors, rode through the eerie mist. Their horses' hooves drummed against the earth, a rhythmic reminder of their recent victory against the rebels. As they journeyed, the air crackled with an unsettling energy, an invisible orchestra tuning up for a performance yet to unfold. Suddenly, they reined in their steeds, for there before them stood three figures cloaked in mystery and shadow, a trio of peculiar women whose appearance defied the laws of nature. Banquo squinted through the mist, his eyes wide with bewilderment. "You should be women," he remarked, "and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so." Macbeth, ever the soldier, demanded answers with the authority of a battlefield commander. Speak if you can. What are you?" The first witch, with a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of the earth, proclaimed, "All hail, Macbeth! Hail to thee, Thane of Glamis!" Her words hung in the air like a spell, weaving an invisible tapestry of fate around the unsuspecting warrior. The second witch stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with a knowing light. "All hail, Macbeth! Hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor!" And then the third witch, with a sinister smile, delivered the crowning prophecy, "All hail, Macbeth! That shalt be king hereafter." Banquo, intrigued yet cautious, regarded the witches with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. "Good sir, why do you start and seem to fear things that do sound so fair?" he inquired, turning to Macbeth. "In the name of truth, are ye fantastical, or that indeed which outwardly ye show? My noble partner you greet with present grace and great prediction of noble having and of royal hope, that he seems rapt withal. To me you speak not." The witches, as if performing an ancient ritual, chanted in unison, "First witch, hail! Second witch, hail! Third witch, hail!" And then, as if guided by some otherworldly script, they began their cryptic address to Banquo. "First witch, lesser than Macbeth and greater. Second witch, not so happy, yet much happier. Third witch, thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. So all hail, Macbeth and Banquo." Their voices rose and fell like the wind, a haunting melody that resonated with hidden meanings. "Banquo and Macbeth, all hail," they concluded, leaving behind an echo that seemed to linger in the very bones of the earth. Macbeth, confounded by the prophecies, implored them to stay. "Stay, you imperfect speakers, tell me more. By Sinel's death I know I am Thane of Glamis, but how of Cawdor? The Thane of Cawdor lives, a prosperous gentleman, and to be king stands not within the prospect of belief, no more than to be Cawdor. Say from whence you owe this strange intelligence, or why upon this blasted heath you stop our way with such prophetic greeting. Speak, I charge you." But the witches, as if carried away by the very wind they conjured, vanished into thin air, leaving Macbeth and Banquo in stunned silence. Banquo, observing the empty space where they once stood, mused, "The earth hath bubbles, as the water has, and these are of them. Whither are they vanished?" Macbeth, still wrestling with the reality of what had transpired, replied, "Into the air, and what seemed corporal melted as breath into the wind. Would they had stayed." The two warriors stood amidst the desolate heath, each grappling with the whispers of destiny. Banquo, ever the rational mind, questioned, "Were such things here as we do speak about, or have we eaten on the insane root that takes the reason prisoner?" Macbeth, caught between hope and disbelief, pondered aloud, "Your children shall be kings." "You shall be king," Banquo reminded him, his voice tinged with the hint of envy mixed with camaraderie. "And Thane of Cawdor too, went it not so?" Macbeth asked, seeking affirmation. Banquo nodded, "To the self-same tune and words." At that very moment the air seemed to shimmer with renewed anticipation as two figures emerged from the mist, Ross and Angus bearing tidings from the king himself. "The king hath happily received, Macbeth, the news of thy success," Ross announced, his voice rich with the weight of royal gratitude. "And when he reads thy personal venture in the rebels' fight, his wonders and his praises do contend. He finds thee in the stout Norweyan ranks, nothing afeard of what thyself didst make, strange images of death." Angus, stepping forward, added, "We are sent to give thee from our royal master thanks, only to herald thee into his sight, not pay thee." Ross continued, his words transforming the air with the gravity of their import. And for an earnest of a greater honour, he bade me from him call thee Thane of Cawdor, in which addition, hail, most worthy Thane, for it is thine. Banquo, his eyes wide with incredulity, could not help but exclaim, "What, can the devil speak true?" Macbeth, grappling with the surreal turn of events, questioned, "The Thane of Cawdor lives. Why do you dress me in borrowed robes?" Angus explained, "Who was the Thane lives yet, but under heavy judgment bears that life which he deserves to lose, whether he was combined with those of Norway, or did line the rebel with hidden help and vantage, or that with both he laboured in his country's wrack, I know not, but treason's capital, confessed and proved, have overthrown him." Macbeth, lost in his thoughts, whispered to himself, "Glamis and Thane of Cawdor, the greatest is behind." Then, turning to his companions, he expressed his gratitude. "Thanks for your pains." Banquo, observing his friend's contemplative state, suggested, "Do you not hope your children shall be kings, when those that gave the Thane of Cawdor to me promised no less to them?" The two warriors exchanged a glance filled with unspoken possibilities. Banquo, ever the pragmatist, cautioned that trusted home might yet enkindle you unto the crown, besides the Thane of Cawdor. But 'tis strange, and oftentimes to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles, to betrays in deepest consequence. As Ross and Angus awaited their response, Macbeth, still caught in the web of prophecy and potential, mused to himself, "Two truths are told, as happy prologues to the swelling act of the imperial theme." The words hung in the air, a prelude to a tale of ambition and fate yet to unfold. Act 1, Part 3. In a world where ambition and fate intertwine, the stage is set under the vast, starry skies of Scotland. The air is thick with anticipation as the noble Macbeth and his loyal companion Banquo make their way towards King Duncan, accompanied by the ever-dutiful Ross and Angus. The scene unfolds like a tapestry woven with threads of destiny and desire. As they enter the royal presence, King Duncan's face lights up with warmth and gratitude. "O worthiest cousin," he exclaims, his voice carrying the weight of sincere appreciation. "The sin of my ingratitude even now was heavy on me. Thou art so far before, that swiftest wing of recompense is slow to overtake thee." Macbeth stands before the king, a picture of humility and loyalty. "The service and the loyalty I owe, in doing it, pays itself," he replies, his voice steady and respectful. "Your Highness's part is to receive our duties, and our duties are to your throne and state, children and servants." Duncan's eyes glisten with emotion as he welcomes Macbeth with open arms. "I have begun to plant thee and will labour to make thee full of growing," he declares, turning to Banquo with equal warmth. "Noble Banquo, that hast no less deserved, nor must be known no less to have done so, let me enfold thee and hold thee to my heart." Banquo receives the king's embrace with a smile. "There if I grow, the harvest is your own," he responds, his voice carrying the promise of loyalty. But amid the joy and celebration, a shadow of ambition flickers in Macbeth's eyes as Duncan announces his eldest son, Malcolm, as the Prince of Cumberland. "The Prince of Cumberland," Macbeth murmurs to himself, his thoughts dark and swirling with desire. "That is a step on which I must fall down, or else o'erleap, for in my way it lies." As Duncan and his entourage prepare to depart for Macbeth's castle, the scene shifts to Inverness, where Lady Macbeth stands alone in her chamber, a letter from her husband clutched in her hand. Her eyes scan the words, her heart racing with the possibilities they present. They met me in the day of success, and I have learned by the perfect's report they have more in them than mortal knowledge, she reads aloud, her voice filled with intrigue and ambition. Glamis thou art, and Corder, and shalt be what thou art promised, she muses, her thoughts a whirlwind of ambition and doubt. Yet do I fear thy nature. It is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. Her soliloquy is interrupted by the entrance of a breathless messenger, his news as swift as the wind. The king comes here tonight, he announces, his words barely forming as he catches his breath. Lady Macbeth's eyes widen with a mix of disbelief and excitement. Thou'rt mad to say it, she exclaims, her mind racing with the implications of this unexpected arrival. The messenger nods, confirming the truth of his message. So please you, it is true, our Thane is coming. As the messenger exits, Lady Macbeth's resolve hardens. The air around her seems to grow colder as she calls upon the spirits of darkness. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here, she implores, her voice a chilling whisper. Fill me from the crown to the toe, top full of direst cruelty. The shadows deepen as the castle prepares for the king's arrival. The weight of impending fate hangs heavy in the air, a palpable presence that seems to pulse with every heartbeat. As Macbeth finally returns to his castle, the couple's eyes meet, a silent understanding passing between them. Great Glamis, worthy Corder, Lady Macbeth greets him, her voice a blend of admiration and determination. Greater than both, by the all-hail hereafter. Thy letters have transported me beyond this ignorant present, and I feel now the future in the instant. Duncan comes here tonight, Macbeth informs her, his words a declaration of opportunity and consequence. And when goes hence? Lady Macbeth inquires, her mind already weaving the threads of their shared ambition. Tomorrow, as he purposes. A steely resolve settles over Lady Macbeth as she contemplates the future. Oh, never shall sun that morrow see, she declares, her voice a promise and a warning. Your face, my Thane, is as a book where men may read strange matters. To beguile the time, look like the time. Bear welcome in your eye, your hand, your tongue. Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under't. As night falls over Inverness, the castle stands as a silent witness to the unfolding drama within its walls. The stars above seem to twinkle with an ominous light, casting shadows that dance across the stone floors. The stage is set, the players in place, and the curtain rises on a tale of ambition, power, and the dark desires that drive the human heart. Act 1, Part 4. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an amber glow over the Scottish Highlands, the air around Macbeth's castle hummed with an electric anticipation. The evening was still, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze and the distant call of a night bird. Inside the castle, Lady Macbeth moved with purpose, her eyes alight with a fierce determination as she spoke to her husband. He that's coming must be provided for, she said, her voice a soft yet insistent whisper. And you shall put this night's great business into my dispatch, which shall to all our nights and days to come give solely sovereign sway and masterdom. Macbeth, standing in the shadows, seemed to waver for a moment, his brow furrowed in contemplation. We will speak further, he replied, his voice low and uncertain. Lady Macbeth turned to him, her eyes gleaming with resolve. Only look up clear. To alter favour ever is. To fear, Leave all the rest to me." With a shared, silent agreement, they exited the room, leaving behind a weighty atmosphere charged with unspoken plans and dark ambitions. Outside, in the cool twilight, the scene was set for the arrival of King Duncan and his entourage. The servants of Macbeth bustled about, preparing for the royal visit, their movements a choreographed dance of efficiency and anticipation. Soon, the sound of horns announced the arrival of the king. Duncan, flanked by his sons Malcolm and Donalbain, and accompanied by noblemen Banquo, Lennox, Macduff, Ross, and Angus, approached the castle. The air around them was sweet and invigorating, carrying the scent of blooming heather and the promise of a pleasant evening. "This castle hath a pleasant seat," Duncan remarked, his voice filled with genuine appreciation. "The air nimbly and sweetly recommends itself unto our gentle senses." Banquo, ever observant, nodded in agreement. This guest of summer, the temple-haunting martlet, does approve by his loved mansionry that the heaven's breath smells wooingly here, no jutty frieze, buttress, nor coign of vantage, but this bird hath made his pendant bed and procreant cradle. Where they most breed and haunt, I have observed the air is delicate. As they approached the entrance, Lady Macbeth emerged, her demeanour the picture of gracious hospitality. Duncan smiled warmly at her. "See, our honoured hostess. The love that follows us sometime is our trouble, which still we thank as love." Lady Macbeth curtsied with impeccable grace. "All our service, in every point twice done, and then done double, were poor and single business to contend against those honours deep and broad wherewith your majesty loads our house," she replied, her words laced with both humility and subtle cunning. Duncan, pleased by her words, inquired, "Where's the Thane of Cawdor? We coursed him at the heels, and had a purpose to be his purveyor. But he rides well, and his great love, sharp as his spur, hath holp him to his home before us." Lady Macbeth responded smoothly, "Your servants ever have theirs, themselves, and what is theirs in compt, to make their audit at your highness's pleasure, still to return your own." Satisfied, Duncan took her hand, ready to be led inside. "Give me your hand, conduct me to mine host. We love him highly, and shall continue our graces towards him. By your leave, hostess." As they entered the castle, the scene shifted to the dimly lit lobby, where the air was thick with the rich aromas of the evening's feast. Torches flickered against the stone walls, casting dancing shadows as a procession of servants moved through, carrying dishes and platters laden with food. In the midst of this activity, Macbeth paced alone, his mind a tumult of conflicted thoughts. "If it were done when 'tis done, then 'twere well it were done quickly," he mused aloud, wrestling with the implications of the night's planned deed. The weight of his conscience bore heavily upon him as he considered the ramifications of assassinating Duncan, a man who trusted him both as kinsman and host. His soliloquy was interrupted by the arrival of Lady Macbeth, her presence as commanding as ever. "How now? What news?" she inquired, eyeing her husband with a mix of impatience and encouragement. Macbeth hesitated, his resolve faltering. "We will proceed no further in this business," he declared. "He hath honoured me of late, and I have bought golden opinions from all sorts of people, which would be worn now in their newest gloss, not cast aside so soon." Lady Macbeth's eyes narrowed, her voice sharp with scorn. "Was the hope drunk wherein you dressed yourself? Hath it slept since, and wakes it now to look so green and pale at what it did so freely? From this time such I account thy love." Her words struck a chord within Macbeth, igniting a spark of defiance and determination. "Prithee, peace! I dare do all that may become a man. Who dares do more is none." Undeterred, Lady Macbeth pressed on, her voice steely and unyielding. "When you durst do it, then you were a man, and to be more than what you were, you would be so much more the man." In the face of her resolute ambition, Macbeth found himself swept along by her fervour. "If we should fail?" he asked, the question hanging heavily in the air. Lady Macbeth's reply was immediate and unwavering. "We fail? But screw your courage to the sticking place, and we'll not fail." Her plan was clear. They would wait until Duncan was asleep, and then, with his guards incapacitated by drink, they would carry out the deed. Her confidence was infectious, and Macbeth, caught in the tide of her conviction, could only nod in agreement. "Bring forth men-children only," he murmured, acknowledging the strength of her spirit, "for thy undaunted mettle should compose nothing but males." With their pact sealed in shared ambition, the die was cast, and the night unfolded around them, a tapestry of shadows and secrets, poised on the brink of irrevocable action. Act 1, Part 5. In a castle looming under the pale light of a crescent moon, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth stood in the dimly lit chamber, their expressions shadowed by the flickering candlelight. The air was thick with the scent of burning wax, mingling with the potent aroma of ambition and trepidation. The room, ornately decorated with tapestries and heavy drapery, felt claustrophobic, as if the very walls were conspiring to keep their conversation secret. Macbeth paced the room, his heavy boots clacking against the stone floor, echoing his inner turmoil. His mind was a tempest, swirling with doubts and dark intentions. He paused, rubbing his brow as if trying to wipe away the storm raging within. Turning to Lady Macbeth, his voice was hushed yet laden with urgency. "Will it not be received?" he began, his eyes narrowing with the weight of his plot. "When we have marked with blood those sleepy two of his own chamber, and used their very daggers that they have done't." Lady Macbeth, ever the picture of steely resolve, stood by the window, her silhouette sharp against the moonlit sky. She turned to face him, her gaze steady and her voice unwavering. "Who dares receive it other?" she replied, her words dripping with the certainty of a seasoned conspirator, "as we shall make our griefs and clamour roar upon his death." Her confidence was a balm to Macbeth's frayed nerves. He stopped pacing, his mind beginning to clear as his resolve hardened. The plan was simple, yet diabolically clever. Frame the guards by using their own weapons against them, and then feign outrage and sorrow at the king's untimely demise. The perfect crime, or so it seemed in the dim glow of their plotting. Macbeth nodded slowly, absorbing her words like a sponge soaking up water, feeling his earlier hesitation dissolve into determination. "I am settled," he declared, his voice growing stronger as if with each word he was casting off the chains of doubt, and bend up each corporal agent to this terrible feat. Lady Macbeth watched him intently, satisfaction playing at the corners of her mouth. She knew the game they were playing was dangerous, but the prize was worth the risk. Her ambition was a fire that burned brightly, consuming any fear or remorse that might have otherwise taken root. Macbeth, now fully committed, straightened his shoulders, feeling the weight of his decision settle upon him like a cloak. "Away, and mock the time with fairest show," he instructed, the command in his voice resonating with authority and resolve. "False face must hide what the false heart doth know." The pair shared a final look, a silent pact sealed between them. It was a look filled with understanding, ambition, and a touch of the madness they were about to unleash. They knew that once they stepped out of that chamber, there would be no turning back. Each would play their part in this deadly charade, their outward appearances concealing the dark truth that lay beneath. As they exited the room, the flickering candle cast long shadows on the walls, as if the very darkness were reaching out to embrace them. The castle corridors were silent, the only sound the soft rustle of their clothing as they moved with purpose through the stone passageways. The night was their ally, its silence a cloak to shroud their intentions. Lady Macbeth led the way, her steps sure and silent, her mind focused on the task ahead. She had no room for doubt or fear. Those emotions were for the weak, and she had long since cast them aside. Her heart beat with a steady rhythm, a drumbeat of determination that matched the pace of their footsteps. Macbeth followed, his thoughts a whirlwind of anticipation and dread. The enormity of what they were about to do weighed heavily on him, but he was buoyed by the strength of his resolve and the support of his partner in crime. He knew that together they were unstoppable. As they neared the king's chambers, the air grew colder, as if the very stones were aware of the foul deed about to be committed. The guards, lulled into a deep slumber by the wine that Lady Macbeth had so cunningly provided, lay oblivious to the treachery unfolding around them. The couple paused outside the door, exchanging a final glance. Lady Macbeth's eyes glinted with a fierce determination, while Macbeth's held a flicker of unease. But he steeled himself, pushing aside the last vestiges of doubt. With a nod, they slipped into the room like shadows, silent and deadly. The king lay sleeping, his breathing deep and even, unaware of the danger lurking in the dark. Macbeth approached the bed, his heart pounding in his chest like a war drum. He hesitated for a moment, a final flicker of humanity trying to claw its way to the surface. But then Lady Macbeth was at his side, her presence a steadying force. "Now is the time," she whispered, her voice a soft yet insistent command. Her eyes bore into his, compelling and unyielding. With a deep breath, Macbeth steeled his nerves and raised the dagger, its cold blade glinting in the moonlight. He was committed now, driven by ambition and the promise of power that lay just within reach. The path was set, the die cast, and as the night closed in around them, the castle seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the deed that would set into motion a chain of events from which there would be no return. The air was thick with anticipation, a pregnant pause before the storm. In that moment, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth stood on the precipice, about to plunge headlong into the abyss of their own making. The night was theirs, and with it the promise of a dark and bloody future. Act 2. In the darkened courtyard of Inverness Castle, the night stretched its shadowy fingers across the ancient stonework, cloaking everything in a veil of mystery. Banquo, a seasoned warrior with a furrowed brow and eyes that gleamed with both wisdom and weariness, walked alongside his young son Fleance. The lad held up a torch, its flickering flame casting a warm orange glow against the cool black night. "How goes the night, boy?" Banquo inquired, his voice a soft rumble that seemed to blend with the night breeze. "The moon is down. I have not heard the clock," Fleance replied, his youthful voice carrying a hint of curiosity as he scanned the sky, searching for the absent moon. Banquo nodded, the weight of the evening pressing down upon him like a leaden cloak. "And she goes down at 12, he mused aloud. Fleance, ever attentive, responded, I take it 'tis later, sir. A sigh escaped Banquo's lips as he handed his sword to Fleance, the metal cool and solid in the boy's hands. Hold, take my sword. There's husbandry in heaven. Their candles are all out, he said, his thoughts drifting towards the celestial, the stars extinguished as if the heavens themselves conserved their light for something dark and foreboding. Suddenly the quiet was interrupted by the approach of Macbeth, accompanied by a servant carrying another torch. Banquo, always vigilant, reached for his sword. "Give me my sword. Who's there?" he demanded. "A friend," Macbeth answered, stepping into the light, his face a mask of composure, though shadows danced in his eyes. Banquo acknowledged him with a nod. "What, sir, not yet at rest? The king's abed. He hath been in unusual pleasure, and sent forth great largesse to your offices. This diamond he greets your wife withal, by the name of most kind hostess, and shut up in measureless content." Macbeth, ever the gracious host, offered a humble smile. Being unprepared, our will became the servant to defect, which else should free have wrought. "All's well," Banquo assured him, though a lingering thought tugged at the edge of his consciousness. "I dreamt last night of the three weird sisters. To you they have showed some truth." Macbeth's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them. "I think not of them," he claimed, waving a hand dismissively. "Yet when we can entreat an hour to serve, we would spend it in some words upon that business, if you would grant the time." "At your kindest leisure," Banquo replied, ever courteous, though his mind was already spinning webs of suspicion and intrigue. "If you shall cleave to my consent, Wentis, it shall make honour for you," Macbeth promised, his words hanging in the air like a subtle invitation. Banquo paused, considering the weight of those words. "So I lose none in seeking to augment it, but still keep my bosom franchised and allegiance clear, I shall be counselled." With that, the two parted ways, Banquo and Fleance disappearing into the shadows, leaving Macbeth alone with his thoughts. The night grew still once more, the silence broken only by the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. As Macbeth stood there, his mind a tumultuous sea of ambition and doubt, he instructed his servant, "Go bid thy mistress, when my drink is ready, she strike upon the bell. Get thee to bed." The servant nodded and left, leaving Macbeth in solitude. He turned his gaze inward, a vision forming in the depths of his mind. "Is this a dagger which I see before me, the handle toward my hand? Come, let me clutch thee," he murmured, reaching out to grasp the spectral blade that hovered just beyond his reach. The dagger danced before him, its presence both tangible and elusive. "I have thee not, and yet I see thee still. Art thou not fatal vision, sensible to feeling as to sight, or art thou but a dagger of the mind, a false creation proceeding from the heat-oppressed brain?" Macbeth's eyes widened as he continued to speak, the words tumbling from his lips like a dark incantation. "I see thee yet, in form as palpable as this which now I draw. Thou marshall'st me the way that I was going, and such an instrument I was to use." The dagger seemed to guide him, pulling him towards his fateful task. "Mine eyes are made the fools of the other senses, or else worth all the rest. I see thee still, and on thy blade and dudgeon gouts of blood, which was not so before. There's no such thing. It is the bloody business which informs thus to mine eyes." He shook his head, trying to dispel the vision, but it clung to him like a shadow. Now o'er the one half-world nature seems dead, and wicked dreams abuse the curtained sleep. Witchcraft celebrates pale Hecate's offerings, and withered murder, alarumed by his sentinel, the wolf, whose howls his watch, thus with his stealthy pace, with Tarquin's ravishing strides, towards his design moves like a ghost. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat a reminder of the terrible path he was about to tread. Thou sure and firm set earth, hear not my steps which way they walk, for fear thy very stones prate of my whereabout, and take the present horror from the time which now suits with it. And then the silence was shattered by the tolling of a bell, its sound resonating through the castle like a death knell. I go, and it is done. The bell invites me. Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell that summons thee to heaven or to hell. With those words, Macbeth steeled himself and vanished into the shadows, leaving behind the echo of the bell and the weight of his impending deed. Elsewhere in the castle, Lady Macbeth prowled the corridors like a restless spirit, her mind aflame with anticipation and trepidation. That which hath made them drunk hath made me bold. What hath quenched them hath given me fire. Hark! Peace! She whispered to herself, her voice a mix of excitement and fear. The night was alive with sounds, the shriek of an owl, the rustle of leaves, the distant howl of the wind. It was the owl that shrieked, the fatal bellman which gives the sternest good night. He is about it. The doors are open, and the surfeited grooms do mock their charge with snores. I have drugged their possets, that death and nature do contend about them, whether they live or die. Her heart raced as she listened for any sign of her husband's success. From the darkness, Macbeth's voice rang out, a harsh whisper that sent shivers down her spine. Who's there? What, ho! Alack, I am afraid they have awaked, and 'tis not done. The attempt and not the deed confounds us. Hark, Lady Macbeth murmured, anxiety threading through her voice. She had meticulously prepared the scene, laying the daggers ready for Macbeth's use. I laid their daggers ready, he could not miss 'em. Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I had done't, she confessed to the shadows, a hint of vulnerability breaking through her steely exterior. At that moment, Macbeth appeared, his face pale and his hands stained with the evidence of his terrible act. I have done the deed. Didst thou not hear a noise? He asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Lady Macbeth met his gaze, her own eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. I heard the owl scream and the crickets cry. Did not you speak? When? Macbeth replied, his voice trembling slightly. Now, she said, her voice soft yet firm, trying to hold the unravelling threads of their plan together. As I descended? He asked, seeking reassurance in the familiar. Aye, she confirmed, her tone resolute. But Macbeth's mind was already spiralling into the abyss. Hark! Who lies in the second chamber? He asked, his voice cracking with anxiety. Donalbain, she answered, trying to ground him in the reality of their surroundings. Macbeth lifted his hands, staring at them as though they belonged to someone else. This is a sorry sight, he said, his tone heavy with regret and horror. A foolish thought to say a sorry sight, Lady Macbeth chastised gently, refusing to let him succumb to weakness. Yet Macbeth's mind was trapped in a loop of fear and guilt. There's one did laugh in sleep, and one cried, murder. That they did wake each other. I stood and heard them. But they did say their prayers and addressed them again to sleep. Lady Macbeth listened, her mind working to keep them both afloat. There are two lodged together, she noted, piecing together the fragments of their plan. One cried, God bless us, and Amen. The other, as they had seen me with these hangman's hands. Listening their fear, I could not say Amen. when they did say, "God bless us." "Consider it not so deeply," Lady Macbeth urged, sensing the danger in his unravelling resolve. "But wherefore could not I pronounce Amen? I had most need of blessing, and Amen stuck in my throat," Macbeth lamented, the weight of his actions pressing down upon him. "These deeds must not be thought after these ways, so it will make us mad," Lady Macbeth warned, her voice firm, though beneath it lay a thread of desperation. But Macbeth was lost in his own turmoil, haunted by the spectre of his guilt. "Methought I heard a voice cry, 'Sleep no more. Macbeth does murder sleep, the innocent sleep. Sleep that knits up the ravelled sleeve of care, the death of each day's life, sore labour's bath, balm of hurt minds, great nature's second course, chief nourisher in life's feast." Lady Macbeth's patience began to fray. "What do you mean?" she demanded, trying to snap him out of his spiralling thoughts. Still it cried, "Sleep no more," to all the house. "Glamis hath murdered sleep, and therefore Corder shall sleep no more. Macbeth shall sleep no more." Who was it that thus cried? "Why, worthy Thane, you do unbend your noble strength to think so brain-sickly of things," Lady Macbeth chided, her voice a mix of frustration and fear as she realised the enormity of the path they had chosen. And so, in the depths of the night, the castle lay silent once more, as the shadows crept ever closer, and the weight of their deeds settled like a shroud over their hearts. Act 2, Part 2. In the hushed, dim corridors of Macbeth's castle, the shadows stretched long and eerie, seemingly alive with the tension of the night's dark deeds. The air was thick with an unshakable dread, a palpable fear that seemed to seep from the very stone walls. Lady Macbeth, her eyes gleaming with a fierce determination, turned sharply to her husband, who stood frozen, a look of horror etched onto his face. "Go get some water and wash this filthy witness from your hand," she commanded, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. Her gaze fell to the blood-streaked daggers clutched in Macbeth's trembling hands. "Why did you bring these daggers from the place? They must lie there. Go carry them and smear the sleepy grooms with blood." But Macbeth stood rooted to the spot, his mind reeling with the gravity of what he had done. "I'll go no more," he murmured, his voice a haunted whisper. "I'm afraid to think what I have done. Look on't again I dare not." "Infirm of purpose," Lady Macbeth snapped, her tone dripping with disdain. She stepped forward, snatching the daggers from his grasp. "Give me the daggers. The sleeping and the dead are but as pictures. 'Tis the eye of childhood that fears a painted devil. If he do bleed, I'll gild the faces of the grooms withal, for it must seem their guilt." With a determined stride she exited, leaving Macbeth alone in the oppressive silence, the echoes of her words ringing in his ears. Suddenly, a loud knocking resounded through the castle, startling Macbeth from his thoughts. "Whence is that knocking?" he muttered, turning his head as if he could see the source of the sound. "How isn't with me when every noise appalls me?" He looked down at his hands, still stained with the king's blood. "What hands are here? Ha, they pluck out mine eyes!" he exclaimed, horror-struck. "Will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand? No, this my hand will rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine, making the green one red." As if on cue, Lady Macbeth re-entered, her hands now a matching crimson. "My hands are of your colour, but I shame to wear a heart so white," she said, her voice firm yet tinged with exasperation. The knocking continued, echoing ominously through the corridors. "I hear knocking at the south entry. Retire we to our chamber. A little water clears us of this deed." How easy is it then? Macbeth, still dazed, nodded absently. To know my deed, 'twere best not know myself, he murmured, as more knocking reverberated through the castle. Wake Duncan with thy knocking, I would thou couldst. As they exited, the scene shifted to the castle's entrance, where a bleary-eyed porter stumbled towards the door, grumbling to himself. Here's a knocking indeed, he muttered, his voice slurred from the previous night's revelry. If a man were porter of Hellgate, he should have old turning the key. The knocking persisted, each thud like a drumbeat heralding doom. Knock, knock, knock. Who's there, in the name of Beelzebub? He called out, his imagination running wild. In his inebriated state, here's a farmer that hanged himself on the expectation of plenty. Come in time, have napkins enow about you, here you'll sweat for it. With each knock, the porter imagined a new visitor, each more outlandish than the last. Knock, knock. Who's there, the other devil's name? Faith, here's an equivocator that could swear in both the scales against either scale, who committed treason enough for God's sake, yet could not equivocate to heaven. Oh, come in, equivocator. The porter continued his drunken ramblings, until finally, with a resigned sigh, he opened the heavy door to reveal Macduff and Lennox standing outside, the morning air crisp and cold around them. Was it so late, friend, ere you went to bed, that you do lie so late? Macduff inquired, his tone light-hearted despite the early hour. Faith, sir, we were carousing till the second cock, and drink, sir, is a great provoker of three things, the porter replied, rubbing his eyes. And what three things does drink especially provoke? Macduff asked, humouring the man's ramblings. Marry, sir, nose-painting, sleep, and urine, the porter declared with a grin. Lechery, sir, it provokes and unprovokes. It provokes the desire, but it takes away the performance. Therefore much drink may be said to be an equivocator with lechery. It makes him and it mars him. It sets him on and it takes him off. It persuades him and disheartens him, makes him stand to and not stand to. In conclusion, equivocates him in a sleep, and giving him the lie, leaves him. Macduff chuckled, shaking his head. I believe drink gave thee the lie last night. That it did, sir, eat the very throat on me. But I requited him for his lie, the porter boasted, puffing his chest with pride. And I think being too strong for him, though he took up my leg sometime, yet I made a shift to cast him. Just then, Macbeth appeared, his demeanour strained and distant. Is thy master stirring? Macduff asked, turning to Macbeth as he approached. Our knocking has awaked him. Here he comes, the porter replied, stepping aside. Good morrow, noble sir. Lennox greeted Macbeth, who nodded in acknowledgment. Good morrow both, Macbeth replied, forcing a smile. Is the king stirring, worthy Thane? Macduff inquired, his tone shifting to one of business. Not yet, Macbeth answered, his eyes flicking towards the entrance to the king's chambers. He did command me to call timely on him. I have almost slipped the hour, Macduff explained, glancing at the sky, where the sun was just beginning to rise. I'll bring you to him, Macbeth offered, gesturing towards the chambers. I know this is a joyful trouble to you, but yet 'tis one, Macduff said with a nod of understanding. The labour we delight in physic's pain, Macbeth replied, the words slipping off his tongue with practised ease. This is the door. As Macduff moved to enter the king's chamber, Lennox turned to Macbeth. Goes the king hence today? He asked. He does. He did appoint so, Macbeth confirmed, his voice flat. The night has been unruly. Where we lay, our chimneys were blown down, and as they say, lamentings herded the air, strange screams of death and prophesying, with accents terrible, of dire combustion and confused events, new hatched to the woeful time. The obscure bird clamoured the livelong night. Some say the earth was feverous and did shake, Lennox recounted, his voice tinged with unease. 'Twas a rough night, Macbeth agreed, his expression unreadable. My young remembrance cannot parallel a fellow to it, Lennox continued, shaking his head at the memory of the tumultuous night. Just then Macduff burst from the king's chamber, his face ashen and his eyes wide with horror. "Oh, horror, horror, horror," he cried, his voice cracking with shock. "Tongue nor heart cannot conceive nor name thee." Macbeth and Lennox rushed to his side, alarm etched on their faces. "What's the matter?" they demanded in unison. "Confusion now hath made his masterpiece," Macduff declared, his voice shaking. "Most sacrilegious murder hath broke ope the Lord's anointed temple, and stole thence the life of the building." Macbeth's heart pounded in his chest, fear and guilt warring within him. "What didst you say? The life?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Mean you his majesty?" Lennox pressed, his voice rising in panic. "Approach the chamber and destroy your sight with a new gorgon," Macduff urged, gesturing towards the open door. "Do not bid me speak. See, and then speak yourselves." As Macbeth and Lennox hurried into the chamber, Macduff's voice rang out in the hall, a clarion call to the castle's occupants. "Awake, awake, ring the alarum bell. Murder and treason, Banquo and Donalbain. Malcolm, awake, shake off this downy sleep, death's counterfeit, and look on death itself. Up, up, and see the great doom's image." The castle erupted into chaos, the echoes of Macduff's cries mingling with the clamour of the alarum bell, as the dread of the night gave way to the dawning horror of the day's revelation. Act 2, Part 3. In the dim-lit corridors of Macbeth's castle, the air was thick, barely stirred by the panic that slowly began to seep through its ancient stones. It was as if the very walls knew of the horror that had unfolded within their confines. The alarum bell rang out, sharp and insistent, a hideous trumpet that called the sleepers from their beds to witness the nightmare that had taken root. Lady Macbeth burst onto the scene, her presence commanding yet laced with a feigned innocence. Her voice cut through the chaos. "What's the business that such a hideous trumpet calls to parley the sleepers of the house? Speak, speak." Macduff, a man of stern resolve, turned to her, his face a mask of grief and urgency. "O gentle lady, 'tis not for you to hear what I can speak. The repetition in a woman's ear would murder as it fell." His words, intended to shield her, only veiled the truth for a moment. Just then, Banquo entered, his presence a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. Macduff's voice, now raw with emotion, rose again. "Oh, Banquo, Banquo, our royal master's murdered." Lady Macbeth feigned shock, her voice a perfect mimicry of distress. "Woe, alas, what, in our house?" Her eyes flickered for a moment, the briefest of exchanges with Macbeth, who had just arrived with Lennox and Ross. Banquo, ever the sceptic, refused to believe it, his mind searching for a contradiction. "Too cruel anywhere. Dear Duff, I prithee contradict thyself and say it is not so." Macbeth, stepping into the gathering storm of grief and suspicion, spoke with a voice heavy with carefully crafted sorrow. "Had I but died an hour before this chance, I had lived a blessed time. For from this instant there's nothing serious in mortality. All is but toys. Renown and grace is dead. The wine of life is drawn, and the mere lees is left this vault to brag of. Malcolm and Donalbain, Duncan's sons, entered, confusion etched on their faces. Donalbain, his voice trembling, asked, "What is amiss?" Macbeth, his voice steady but echoing with underlying tension, replied, "You are and do not know it. The spring, the head, the fountain of your blood is stopped. The very source of it is stopped." Macduff, ever direct, delivered the grim news without ceremony. "Your royal father's murdered." Malcolm's voice was a whisper in the now hushed room. "Oh, by whom?" It was Lennox who answered, painting a grim picture with his words. Those of his chamber, as it seemed, had done it. Their hands and faces were all badged with blood, so were their daggers, which, unwiped, we found upon their pillows. They starred and were distracted. No man's life was to be trusted with them. Macbeth, seizing the moment, confessed with a flourish of dramatics, "Oh, yet I do repent me of my fury, that I did kill them." Macduff, suspicious, pressed further, "Wherefore did you so?" Macbeth, a master of manipulation, crafted his reply with an artistry that blurred the lines between truth and deception. "Who can be wise, amazed, temperate, and furious, loyal and neutral in a moment? No man. The expedition of my violent love outrun the pauser, reason. Here lay Duncan, his silver skin laked with his golden blood, and his gashed stabs looked like a breach in nature for ruin's wasteful entrance. There the murderers, steeped in the colours of their trade, their daggers unmannily breached with gore. Who could refrain, that had a heart to love, and in that heart courage to make's love known? Lady Macbeth, caught in the tangled web of their own making, feigned a swoon, crying out, "Help me hence, ho!" Macduff urged those nearby, "Look to the lady," as Lady Macbeth was carried out, the scene shifting once more. Malcolm, sensing the danger, whispered urgently to his brother, "Why do we hold our tongues, that most may claim this argument for ours?" Donalbain replied with a sombre clarity, "What should be spoken here, where our fate hid in an auger hole may rush and seize us? Let's away. Our tears are not yet brewed." As the others agreed to meet later and discuss the day's bloody events, Malcolm and Donalbain made a clandestine pact. Malcolm declared, "What will you do? Let's not consort with them. To show an unfelt sorrow is an office which the false man does easy. I'll to England." Donalbain nodded, his resolve firm. "To Ireland I. Our separated fortune shall keep us both the safer. Where we are, there's daggers in men's smiles, the near in blood, the nearer. A bloody." With a final word of warning, Malcolm added, "This murderous shaft that's shot hath not yet lighted, and our safest way is to avoid the aim. Therefore to horse, and let us not be dainty of leave-taking, but shift away. There's warrant in that theft which steals itself when there's no mercy left." As they exited, the weight of their decision lingered in the air, a silent testament to the treacherous times they found themselves in. Outside the castle, in the grey light of dawn, Ross and an old man stood, their conversation a quiet reflection of the chaos within. The old man, his voice weary with age and wisdom, mused, 70 I can remember well, within the volume of which time I have seen hours dreadful and things strange, but this sore night hath trifled former knowings." Ross, his gaze fixed on the troubled sky, agreed. "Ha, good father, thou seest the heavens as troubled with man's act, threatens his bloody stage. By the clock 'tis day, and yet dark night strangles the travelling lamp. Is night's predominance, or the day's shame, that darkness does the face of earth entomb, when living light should kiss it? The old man nodded, his voice a solemn echo. "'Tis unnatural, even like the deed that's done. On Tuesday last a falcon, towering in her pride of place, was by a mousing owl hawked at and killed." Ross added, "And Duncan's horses, a thing most strange and certain, beauteous and swift, the minions of their race, turned wild in nature, broke their stalls, flung out contending 'gainst obedience as they would make war with mankind." The old man's voice was grave as he confirmed, "'Tis said they eat each other." Ross shook his head, still in disbelief. "They did so, to the amazement of mine eyes that looked upon't." Just then Macduff approached, his presence a grounding force in the midst of speculation. Ross greeted him. "How goes the world, sir, now?" Macduff's reply was curt. "Why, see you not?" Ross, seeking clarity, asked, "Isn't known who did this more than bloody deed?" Macduff's response was measured, "Those that Macbeth hath slain." Ross lamented, "Alas, the day, what good could they pretend?" Macduff explained, "They were suborned. Malcolm and Donalbain, the king's two sons, are stolen away and fled, which puts upon them suspicion of the deed." Ross, reflecting on the unnatural order of things, remarked, "'Gainst nature still, thriftless ambition, that will raven up thine own life's means, then 'tis most like the sovereignty will fall upon Macbeth." Macduff confirmed, "He is already named and gone to Scone to be invested." Ross, curious about the late king's final resting place, asked, "Where is Duncan's body?" Macduff replied, "Carried to Colmacill, the sacred storehouse of his predecessors and guardian of their bones." Ross, considering his next move, inquired, "Will you to Scone?" Macduff, his resolve settled, answered, "No, cousin, I'll to Fife." Ross nodded, understanding the choice. "Well, I will thither." Macduff offered a parting word of wisdom. "Well, may you see things well done there. Adieu, lest our old robes sit easier than our new." As Ross bid farewell to the old man, the elder offered his blessing, "God's benison go with you, and with those that would make good of bad and friends of foes." With that, they parted ways, the castle behind them, and the future uncertain, as the storm of ambition and deceit continued to brew. At 3. Once upon a time in the regal halls of Forres, the palace was alive with the low hum of anticipation. The grand corridors echoed with the clatter of footsteps, and the air was thick with the scent of anticipation and the subtle aroma of a forthcoming feast. Banquo walked through these halls, his mind a whirlpool of thoughts, his eyes carrying a shadow of concern as he considered the strange events that had come to pass. "Thou hast it now," Banquo murmured to himself, a note of unease in his voice. King, Corder, Glamis, all as the weird women promised. But at what cost? He paused, his gaze distant as if peering into the murky depths of some unseen future. "I fear thou playedst most foully fought," he whispered, the suspicion heavy in his heart. "Yet it was said it should not stand in thy posterity, but that myself should be the root and father of many kings." The thought gave Banquo a sliver of hope, a light in the shadowy corridors of his mind. If their words held truth for Macbeth, why not for me? He pondered, the corners of his lips twitching upwards in a ghost of a smile. But then, as if shaking off a daydream, he whispered, "But hush, no more." As Banquo grappled with his thoughts, a senate blared through the palace, announcing the entrance of King Macbeth and his queen, Lady Macbeth. The room was suddenly alive with the presence of nobility, a tapestry of movement and sound. Macbeth, now king, wore his title like a cloak, heavy but regal. His eyes scanned the room and landed on Banquo, a smile breaking across his face, as if he had just spotted an old friend. "Here's our chief guest," Macbeth declared, his voice carrying an edge of sincerity that only the keenest of ears might question. "If he had been forgotten," Lady Macbeth chimed in, her voice smooth as silk, "it had been as a gap in our great feast, and all thing unbecoming." "Tonight we hold a solemn supper, sir," Macbeth continued, his tone now inviting, "and I'll request your presence." Banquo, ever the loyal subject, inclined his head. "Let your highness command upon me," he replied, his words woven with duty and respect, "to the which my duties are with a most indissoluble tie forever knit." "Ride you this afternoon?" Macbeth inquired, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if measuring the weight of Banquo's response. "Ay, my good lord," Banquo confirmed, nodding. "We should have else desired your good advice," Macbeth mused, his voice laced with regret, "which still hath been both grave and prosperous in this day's council, but will take tomorrow. Is't far you ride?" "As far, my lord, as will fill up the time twixt this and supper," Banquo replied, calculating the distance in his mind. "Go not my horse the better. I must become a borrower of the night, for a dark hour or twain." Macbeth nodded, a hint of satisfaction curling his lips. "Fail not our feast," he commanded, his words carrying an undercurrent of insistence. "My lord, I will not," Banquo promised, his commitment firm. As the conversation lingered, Macbeth's mind drifted to darker matters. "We hear our bloody cousins are bestowed in England and in Ireland," he remarked, his voice low with conspiracy, not confessing their cruel parricide, filling their hearers with strange invention. "But of that tomorrow, when therewithal we shall have cause of state craving us jointly. Hie you to horse, adieu, till you return at night," Macbeth concluded, his voice warm but dismissive. "Goes Fleance with you?" "Ay, my good lord," Banquo confirmed once more, feeling the weight of time pressing upon him. "Our time does call upon's." As Banquo departed, Macbeth watched him go, a calculating look in his eyes. "I wish your horses swift and sure of foot," he called after Banquo, "and so I do commend you to their backs. Farewell." With Banquo gone, the room emptied, leaving Macbeth alone with the shadows of his thoughts. He turned to a nearby servant, his voice sharp and commanding. "Sirrah, a word with you. Attend those men our pleasure." "They are, my lord, without the palace gate," the servant replied, his demeanour crisp and efficient. "Bring them before us," Macbeth ordered, his mind already turning to the grim task ahead. As the servant departed, Macbeth stood alone, the silence of the room pressing in on him. "To be thus is nothing," he muttered to himself, his voice a whisper of desperation. "But to be safely thus, our fears in Banquo stick deep, and in his royalty of nature reigns that which would be feared." His thoughts churned, a tempest of insecurity and ambition. "There is none but he whose being I do fear," Macbeth admitted, his voice a low growl. "Upon my head they placed a fruitless crown and put a barren sceptre in my gripe." A knock at the door pulled Macbeth from his reverie, and the servant returned with two rough-looking men. The murderers stood before him, their expressions a mixture of greed and resolve. "Now go to the door and stay there till we call," Macbeth instructed the servant, dismissing him with a wave before turning his attention to the murderers. "Was it not yesterday we spoke together?" "It was, so please your highness," the first murderer replied, his voice gruff and eager. "Well then now," Macbeth continued, his voice smooth and persuasive, "have you considered of my speeches? know that it was he, in the times past, which held you so under fortune. The murderers nodded, their eyes gleaming with understanding. Macbeth's words were like seeds planted in fertile soil, ready to grow into something dark and deadly. As the conversation continued, the stage was set for the next act of treachery, and the wheels of fate began to turn once more. Act 3, Part 2. In the grand candle-lit hall of Macbeth's castle, ominous shadows danced across the stone walls, flickering with a restless firelight. The air was thick with tension and the smell of burning wax. Macbeth, the newly crowned king, stood in the centre, a storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. His eyes, dark and intense, scanned the room, as if seeking answers from the very shadows that surrounded him. Before him, 2 men stood, rough around the edges, their clothes worn and faces hardened by life's cruel hand. They were the first and second murderers, summoned by Macbeth for a purpose that was as dark as the night itself. "Do you find your patience so predominant in your nature?" Macbeth began, his voice a low, commanding whisper that echoed through the hall. "That you can let this go? Are you so gospelled to pray for this good man and for his issue, whose heavy hand hath bowed you to the grave and beggared yours forever?" The first murderer, his face lined with bitterness, straightened his back and declared, "We are men, my liege." Macbeth, a hint of a cynical smile playing on his lips, retorted, "Aye, in the catalogue ye go for men, as hounds and greyhounds, mongrels, spaniels, curs, shows, water-rugs and demi-wolves are clept all by the name of dogs." He paused, letting the words linger, their meaning as sharp as a dagger. The valued file distinguishes the swift, the slow, the subtle, the housekeeper, the hunter, everyone according to the gift which bounteous nature hath in him closed. Macbeth stepped closer, his eyes piercing through the dim light. "Now if you have a station in the file, not i' the worst rank of manhood, say, and I will put that business in your bosoms whose execution takes your enemy off, grapples you to the heart and love of us, who wear our health but sickly in his life, which in his death were perfect." The second murderer, his voice filled with the grit of desperation, confessed, "I am one, my liege, whom the vile blows and buffets of the world hath so incensed that I am reckless what I do to spite the world." "And I another," added the first murderer, his tone weary, "so weary with disasters, tugged with fortune, that I would set my life on any chance to mend it or be rid on't." Macbeth, nodding with satisfaction, affirmed, "Both of you know Banquo was your enemy?" "True, my lord," they replied in unison, their voices firm with shared resolve. Macbeth's mind raced, concocting plans with the precision of a master strategist. "So is he mine, and in such bloody distance that every minute of his being thrusts against my nearest of life. And though I could with bare-faced power sweep him from my sight, and bid my will avouch it, yet I must not, for certain friends that are both his and mine, whose loves I may not drop, but wail his fall who I myself struck down." The second murderer, resolute, pledged, "We shall, my lord, perform what you command us." The first murderer echoed, "Though our lives, your spirits shine through you." Macbeth cut in, his voice a blend of authority and encouragement. "Within this hour at most I will advise you where to plant yourselves, acquaint you with the perfect spy of the time, the moment on't, for it must be done tonight, and something from the palace. Always thought that I require a clearness." Macbeth's eyes flickered with a dark intensity. And with him, to leave no rubs nor botches in the work, Fleance his son, that keeps him company, whose absence is no less material to me than is his father's, must embrace the fate of that dark hour. Resolve yourselves apart. I'll come to you anon. We are resolved, my lord, they assured. I'll call upon you straight. Abide within, Macbeth commanded, his voice brokering no argument. As the murderers exited, their footsteps echoing away into the corridor, Macbeth stood alone in the flickering half-light, whispering to the shadows, "It is concluded, Banquo, thy soul's flight, if it find heaven, must find it out tonight." Switching scenes, we find ourselves in another room of the castle, a place less foreboding but equally tense. Lady Macbeth, her presence commanding yet troubled, entered with a servant. "Is Banquo gone from court?" she inquired, her voice laced with underlying tension. "Ay, madam, but returns again tonight," the servant replied. "Say to the king I would attend his leisure for a few words," she instructed, her gaze distant, preoccupied. "Madam, I will," the servant replied, exiting swiftly. Left alone, Lady Macbeth's facade cracked, revealing the turmoil beneath. "Naught's had, all's spent, where our desire is got without content. 'Tis safer to be that which we destroy, than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy." Just then, Macbeth entered the room, his presence casting a shadow that seemed to merge with the darkness in her heart. "How now, my lord? Why do you keep alone, of sorriest fancies your companions making, using those thoughts which should indeed have died with them they think on?" she questioned, hoping to soothe his troubled spirit. "Things without all remedy should be without regard. What's done is done." Macbeth's eyes, haunted and restless, turned to her. "We have scorched the snake, not killed it. She'll close and be herself, whilst our poor Malice remains in danger of her former tooth. But let the frame of things disjoint, both the worlds suffer, ere we will eat our meal in fear, and sleep in the affliction of these terrible dreams that shake us nightly." Lady Macbeth, ever the strategist, urged, "Come on, gently, my lord, sleek o'er your rugged looks, be bright and jovial among your guests tonight." "So shall I, love, and so I pray, be you," Macbeth replied, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Let your remembrance apply to Banquo, present him eminence both with eye and tongue." "You must leave this," Lady Macbeth insisted, sensing the weight of his burdens. "Oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife," Macbeth exclaimed, the metaphor as chilling as it was vivid. "Thou know'st that Banquo and his Fleance lives." "But in them nature's copies not etern," she soothed, offering a glimmer of hope. "There's comfort yet, they are assailable," Macbeth acknowledged, his resolve hardening. "Then be thou jocund, ere the bat hath flown his cloistered flight, ere to black Hecate's summons the shard-born beetle, with his drowsy hums, hath rung night's yawning peal, there shall be done a deed of dreadful note." "What's to be done?" Lady Macbeth asked, curiosity piqued by his cryptic words. "Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck, till thou applaud the deed," Macbeth replied, a shadow of his former self now fully embracing the dark path ahead. "Come, sealing night, scarf up the tender eye of pitiful day, and with thy bloody and invisible hand cancel and tear to pieces that great bond which keeps me pale." Macbeth's eyes turned to the window, where the last vestiges of daylight waned. Light thickens, and the crow makes wing to the rooky wood. Good things of day begin to droop and drowse, whiles night's black agents to their praise do rouse. Lady Macbeth watched him, concern etched into her features. Thou marvelst at my words, but hold thee still. Things bad begun make strong themselves by ill, Macbeth concluded, turning to her with a mixture of determination and dread. So, prithee, go with me. Together they exited the room, their steps echoing as they walked side by side into the deepening shadows of the castle, where night and its dark deeds awaited. Act 3, Part 3. In the soft glow of the setting sun, the park was a tapestry of shadows and dim light, where the last streaks of day hesitated on the horizon. It was a place of serene beauty, a deceptive calmness that belied the sinister plot unfolding. The air was thick with anticipation, as if nature itself held its breath, waiting for the night to bring forth its secrets. A gate stood at the edge, leading to the grandeur of the palace, where power and treachery danced their dangerous waltz. Emerging from the shadows like malevolent spirits were 3 figures, cloaked and hooded, their presence a dark omen. The first murderer, a man of grim resolve, broke the silence, his voice a whisper that sliced through the air. "But who did bid thee join with us?" he asked, his words heavy with suspicion. The third murderer, the newcomer to this coven of killers, replied with a name that carried weight and dread. "Macbeth," he answered simply, the single word a testament to the night's grim intentions. The second murderer, a figure of cold pragmatism, dismissed any doubts. "He needs not our mistrust, since he delivers our offices and what we have to do to the direction just," he assured, confidence in his voice. They were instruments of a will greater than their own, pawns in a game where the stakes were life and death. The first murderer nodded, their purpose clear. "Then stand with us. The west yet glimmers with some streaks of day. Now spurs the lated traveller apace to gain the timely inn, and near approaches the subject of our watch," he declared, his eyes scanning the horizon, seeking their quarry. "Hark! I hear horses," the third murderer announced, his ears attuned to the sounds of destiny approaching on hooves. From the distance, a voice called out, strong and unsuspecting. Banquo, the noble lord, approached, his words a beacon in the encroaching night. "Give us a light there, ho," he called, his request innocent, unaware of the danger that lurked. "That's him. The rest that are within the note of expectation already are in the court," the second murderer confirmed, the pieces falling into place. The first murderer noted the horses' path, their familiarity with the terrain a cruel irony. "His horses go about," he observed, knowing well the routine that would soon be shattered. "Almost a mile, but he does usually, so all men do. From hence to the palace gate make it their walk," the third murderer added, their knowledge of the path a prelude to the ambush. As Banquo and his son Fleance, their torch a flickering guide, drew near, the second murderer's voice cut through the tension. "A light! A light!" he announced, the signal of fate's arrival. "'Tis he," the third murderer confirmed, steeling himself for the act that would forever stain his soul. The first murderer gave the command, 3 simple words that sealed Banquo's fate. "Stand to't," he ordered, and the night descended into chaos. "It will be rain tonight," Banquo mused, his voice a calm before the storm. "Let it come down," the first murderer replied, his words a harbinger of the violence to come. In a flurry of movement they attacked, blades flashing in the dying light. "O treachery, fly, good Fleance, fly, fly, fly! Thou mayst revenge, O slave!" Banquo cried out, his voice a mix of agony and urgency, urging his son to escape the clutches of death. Fleance, driven by fear and desperation, heeded his father's words, vanishing into the night, a ghost of hope in the shadow of despair. Who did strike out the light? The third murderer questioned, confusion mingling with the darkness. Wasn't not the way? The first murderer responded, as if the chaos had its own logic. There's but one down. The sun is fled. The third murderer lamented, the gravity of their failure sinking in. We have lost best half of our affair, the second murderer admitted, the night's grim tally incomplete. Well, let's away and say how much is done, the first murderer concluded, their retreat a quiet echo of the violence they had wrought. Meanwhile, in the opulent halls of the palace, a different scene unfolded. A grand banquet, a display of power and opulence filled the room. Laughter and conversation floated through the air, a stark contrast to the bloodshed outside. Macbeth, the newly crowned king, stood amidst the revelry, his presence a blend of authority and unease. You know your own degrees. Sit down. At first and last the hearty welcome, Macbeth declared, a king among his subjects, yet a man isolated by his ambitions. Thanks to your majesty, the lords replied, their words a chorus of respect, masking the undercurrents of courtly intrigue. Ourself will mingle with society and play the humble host. Our hostess keeps her state, but in best time we will require her welcome, Macbeth continued, his words a veneer of normalcy over the turmoil within. Lady Macbeth, the queen whose ambition matched her husband's, added her voice to the evening's facade. Pronounce it for me, sir, to all our friends, for my heart speaks they are welcome, she said, her smile a mask as well rehearsed as the lines of a play. As the banquet unfolded, a shadow slipped into the room, unnoticed by the revellers. The first murderer, fresh from the night's grim task, stood at the door, his presence a silent reminder of the darkness that clung to Macbeth's reign. There's blood upon thy face, Macbeth noted, his voice low and urgent, a private exchange amid the public spectacle. 'Tis Banquo's, then, the murderer replied, the words carrying the weight of a life extinguished. 'Tis better thee without than he within. Is he dispatched? Macbeth inquired, the cold calculus of power evident in his tone. My lord, his throat is cut. That I did for him, the murderer confirmed, a grim report of duty fulfilled. Macbeth's mind raced, the news both a relief and a reminder of unfinished business. Thou art the best of the cutthroats, yet he's good that did the like for Fleance. If thou didst it, thou art the nonpareil, he praised, the words transactional, devoid of genuine gratitude. Most royal, sir, Fleance escaped, the murderer admitted, the failure casting a shadow over their success. Then comes my fit again. I had else been perfect, whole as the marble, founded as the rock, as broad and general as the casing air. But now I am cabined, cribbed, confined, bound into saucy doubts and fears. But Banquo's safe? Macbeth queried, his mind a storm of anxiety and dread. Ay, my good lord, safe in a ditch he bides, with 20 trenched gashes on his head, the least a death to nature, the murderer replied, the details of Banquo's demise a grim comfort. Thanks for that. There the grown serpent lies. The worm that's fled hath nature that in time will venom breed, no teeth for the present. Get thee gone. Tomorrow we'll hear ourselves again, Macbeth concluded, a king juggling the demands of rule with the burdens of guilt. As the murderer slipped away, Lady Macbeth turned to her husband, her words a reminder of the public performance they must maintain. My royal lord, you do not give the cheer. The feast is sold that is not. Often vouched, while 'tis a making, 'tis given with welcome. To feed were best at home, from thence the source to meet is ceremony. Meeting were bare without it, she chided, her voice a blend of practicality and urgency. But the night held more than just the weight of murder. It held the spectre of consequence. As Macbeth attempted to regain his composure, the ghost of Banquo rose, a silent accusation that took form and substance. The apparition sat at Macbeth's place, its presence an invisible hand that tipped the king's fragile balance. Sweet remembrancer, now good digestion wait on appetite, and health on both, Macbeth toasted, his words hollow, his eyes fixed on the ghostly figure. May't please your highness sit, Lennox urged, the host's absence noted. Here had we now our country's honour roofed, were the graced person of our Banquo present. Who may I rather challenge for unkindness than pity for mischance? Macbeth lamented, the irony of his words lost on the gathering. His absence, sir, lays blame upon his promise. Please it your highness to grace us with your royal company, Ross prompted, the evening script in need of its leading man. The table's full, Macbeth stated, his words a shock, the ghost's presence unseen by all but him. Here is a place reserved, sir, Lennox offered, confusion spreading through the room. Where? Macbeth demanded, his eyes wide, searching for a ghost among the living. Here, my good lord, what isn't that moves your highness? Lennox questioned, the king's behaviour unsettling. Which of you have done this? Macbeth accused, his voice rising, a man on the edge of reason. What, my good lord? The lords responded, their bewilderment genuine. Thou canst not say I did it. Never shake thy gory locks at me, Macbeth shouted, his fear a palpable presence, the ghost's silent accusation driving him to the brink. Gentlemen, rise. His highness is not well, Ross urged, the evening's veneer cracking under the strain. Sit, worthy friends. My lord is often thus, and hath been from his youth. Pray you, keep seat. The fit is momentary. Upon a thought he will again be well. If much you note him, you shall offend him and extend his passion. Feed and regard him not. Are you a man? Lady Macbeth interjected, her control over the situation slipping, her words a desperate attempt to restore order. Ay, and a bold one, that dare look on that which might appall the devil, Macbeth replied, the ghost a spectre of his own making. Oh, proper stuff! This is the very painting of your fear. This is the air-drawn dagger which you said led you to Duncan. Oh, these flaws and starts, impostors to true fear, would well become a woman's story at a winter's fire, authorized by her grandame. Shame itself. Why do you make such faces? When all's done, you look but on a stool. Lady Macbeth chastised, her words a mix of frustration and disbelief. Prithee, see there, behold, look. Lo, how say you? Why, what care I? If thou canst nod, speak too. If charnel houses and our graves must send those that we bury back, our monuments shall be the maws of kites. Macbeth raged, the ghost's disappearance a temporary reprieve. What, quite unmanned in folly? Lady Macbeth questioned, her patience wearing thin. If I stand here I saw him, Macbeth insisted, the ghost's presence a haunting reality. Fie, for shame, Lady Macbeth retorted, her voice a whip of scorn. Blood hath been shed ere now, at the olden time, ere humane statute purged the gentle weal. Ay, and since too, murders have been performed too terrible for the ear. The time has been that, when the brains were out, the man would die, and there an end. But now they rise again, with 20 mortal murders on their crowns, and push us from our stools. Macbeth reflected, the weight of his actions a chain that bound him to the past. In that grand room where power and fear intertwined, the banquet continued, a hollow celebration overshadowed by ghosts of what was and what might be. The night wore on, a tapestry of whispers and shadows, as Macbeth and Lady Macbeth danced their perilous waltz, the spectres of their ambitions ever at their heels. Act 3, Part 4. In the dimly lit banquet hall of Macbeth's castle, the air was thick with the scent of roasted meats and the murmur of noble conversation. It was a night of celebration, yet the atmosphere felt tense, like a string pulled tight, ready to snap. Macbeth, the newly crowned king, was at his table, but his mind was elsewhere. He wore a smile that seemed more like a mask, hiding the turmoil beneath. Lady Macbeth, his queen, stood beside him, her eyes sharp, scanning the room with the precision of a hawk. "My worthy lord," Lady Macbeth whispered, her voice a silken thread, meant to draw him back to the present. "Your noble friends do lack you." Macbeth blinked, as if waking from a dream. "I do forget," he confessed, his words tinged with the weight of his thoughts. He rose, lifting his goblet high, his voice carrying over the crowd. "Do not muse at me, my most worthy friends. I have a strange infirmity, which is nothing to those that know me." With an unsteady grin, he continued, "Come, love and health to all. Then I'll sit down." He gestured for a servant to fill his cup to the brim. "I drink to the general joy of the whole table, and to our dear friend Banquo, whom we miss. Would he were here?" As if on cue, a shiver rippled through the room. Unseen by the guests, but all too visible to Macbeth, the ghost of Banquo rose, an apparition of silent accusation. Macbeth's eyes widened, his expression shifting from conviviality to horror. "To all and him we thirst, and all to all," he stammered, trying to maintain composure. The lords raised their glasses, oblivious to the spectre. "Our duties and the pledge," they echoed in unison. But Macbeth's gaze was fixed on the ghost, his voice trembling with both fear and fury. "Avaunt, and quit my sight!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. "Let the earth hide thee. Thy bones are marrowless, thy blood is cold. Thou hast no speculation in those eyes which thou dost glare with." Lady Macbeth, sensing the unravelling, stepped forward quickly. "Think of this, good peers, but as a thing of custom. 'Tis no other," she urged, her voice smooth and calming. "Only it spoils the pleasure of the time." Macbeth, caught in the grip of his vision, was undeterred. "What man dare, I dare," he declared, chest heaving with bravado, half-heartedly masking his dread. "Approach thou like the rugged Russian bear, the armed rhinoceros, or the Hyrcan tiger, take any shape but that, and my firm nerves shall never tremble." In a wild plea, he challenged the ghost to take any form but Banquo's. "Or be alive again, and dare me to the desert with thy sword. If trembling I inhabit then, protest me the baby of a girl. Hence, horrible shadow, unreal mockery, hence." As the ghost faded, leaving Macbeth alone in his guilt and madness, relief washed over him. "Why so, being gone, I am a man again," he muttered, trying to regain his former poise. "Pray you, sit still." Yet the damage was done. Lady Macbeth's face was a mask of frustration as she surveyed the disrupted gathering. "You have displaced the mirth, broke the good meeting with most admired disorder," she chided, her voice low but firm. Macbeth's thoughts tumbled in disarray, his mind a storm of doubt and dread. Can such things be and overcome us like a summer's cloud, without our special wonder? he mused aloud, his eyes flitting from face to face. You make me strange even to the disposition that I owe, when now I think you can behold such sights, and keep the natural ruby of your cheeks, when mine are blanched with fear. Ross, one of the lords, shifted uneasily in his seat. What sights, my lord? He asked, puzzled by the king's cryptic words. Lady Macbeth intervened swiftly, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. I pray you, speak not. He grows worse and worse, she advised, urgency in her tone. Question enrages him. At once, good night, stand not upon the order of your going, but go at once. Taking the cue, Lennox and the other lords rose, offering hurried farewells. Good night, and better health attend his majesty, Lennox called, the words more a hope than a certainty. A kind good night to all, Lady Macbeth echoed, ushering them out with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. As the last of the guests departed, the door closed with a heavy thud, leaving the royal couple in the silence of the empty hall. It will have blood, they say. Blood will have blood, Macbeth murmured, his voice a mere whisper in the cavernous space. Stones have been known to move, and trees to speak. Augurs and understood relations have by maggot pies and chows and rooks brought forth the secret'st man of blood. Lady Macbeth watched him, her expression a mix of concern and frustration. What is the night? She asked softly. Almost at odds with morning, which is which? Macbeth replied, the weight of his deeds pressing down on him like an iron mantle. How sayst thou that Macduff denies his person at our great bidding? He inquired, a flicker of suspicion igniting in his eyes. Did you send to him, sir? Lady Macbeth asked, her voice gentle but probing. I hear it, by the way, but I will send, Macbeth resolved. There's not a one of them, but in his house I keep a servant feed. I will tomorrow, and betimes I will, to the weird sisters. More shall they speak, for now I am bent to know by the worst means, the worst. His resolve hardened, his words dripped with determination. For mine own good, all causes shall give way. I am in blood stepped in so far that should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as go o'er. Lady Macbeth, ever the pragmatist, offered her own diagnosis. You lack the season of all nature's sleep, she said, her voice tinged with both care and weariness. Come, we'll to sleep, Macbeth agreed, his voice resigned. My strange and self-abuse is the initiate fear that wants hard use. We are yet but young indeed. With that they left the hall, the echoes of their footsteps fading into the night. Meanwhile, on a storm-swept heath, the air crackled with energy as the three witches gathered under a sky split by lightning. The first witch turned, eyes narrowing as Hecate, their queen, approached with a dark aura of authority. Why, how now, Hecate, you look angrily, the first witch noted, a hint of apprehension in her voice. Hecate's eyes blazed with indignation. Have I not reason, beldams, as you are, saucy and overbold? She admonished, her voice carrying the weight of ancient power. How did you dare to trade and traffic with Macbeth in riddles and affairs of death? And I, the mistress of your charms, the close contriver of all harms, was never called to bear my part, or show the glory of our art. The witches listened, chastised but unrepentant as Hecate continued her tirade. And which is worse, all you have done hath been but for a wayward son, spiteful and wrathful, who, as others do, loves for his own ends, not for you. With a commanding gesture, Hecate set her plans in motion. But make amends now. Get you gone, and at the pit of Acheron meet me in the morning. Thither he will come to know his destiny. As she outlined their next steps, Her voice took on a chilling certainty. Your vessels and your spells provide, your charms and everything beside. I am for the air. This night I'll spend unto a dismal and a fatal end. Her eyes glinted as she spoke of the mystical elements at her command. Upon the corner of the moon there hangs a vaporous drop profound. I'll catch it ere it come to ground, and that, distilled by magic sleights, shall raise such artificial sprites as by the strength of their illusion shall draw him on to his confusion. In her final words she revealed the crux of her plan. He shall spurn fate, scorn death, and bear his hopes above wisdom, grace, and fear. And you all know security is mortal's chiefest enemy. With a melodic call from the shadows, a song beckoned Hecate away. Hark, I am called, my little spirit, see, sits in a foggy cloud and stays for me. And with that, she vanished into the storm. The first witch turned to her sisters, urgency in her voice. Come, let's make haste. She'll soon be back again. The witches disappeared into the swirling mist, leaving the heath shrouded in mystery. Back at the palace in Forres, Lennox met with another lord in a quiet chamber, their conversation hushed and wary. Lennox, his brow furrowed with concern, spoke in measured tones. My former speeches have but hit your thoughts, which can interpret farther. Only, I say, things have been strangely born. He recounted the recent events, his words tinged with scepticism. The gracious Duncan was pitied of Macbeth, marry he was dead, and the right valiant Banquo walked too late, whom you may say, if't please you, Fleance killed, for Fleance fled. Men must not walk too late. The other lord nodded, understanding the implication. Lennox continued, his voice growing quiet with suspicion. Who cannot want the thought? How monstrous it was for Malcolm and for Donalbain to kill their gracious father. Damned fact. How it did grieve Macbeth. Did he not straight in pious rage the two delinquents tear that were the slaves of drink and thralls of sleep? With a sardonic edge, Lennox concluded, was not that nobly done? Aye, and wisely too, for 'twould have angered any heart alive to hear the men deny it. So that, I say, he has borne all things well, and I do think that had he Duncan's sons under his key, as, and please heaven, he shall not, they should find what 'twere to kill a father, so should Fleance. The lord, his expression grave, inclined his head. But peace? For from broad words, and 'cause he failed his presence at the tyrant's feast, I hear, Macduff lives in disgrace. Their conversation, laden with the weight of uncertainty and the stirrings of rebellion, hung in the air as the scene faded to black. Act 3, Part 5. In the dimly lit halls of a grand Scottish castle, the air was thick with tension and whispers. The flickering torches cast long shadows upon the stone walls, where two figures stood in hushed conversation. The first was a noble lord, his demeanour sombre and reflective. The second, Lennox, a man caught in the web of courtly intrigue, his brow furrowed with concern. Sir, can you tell where he bestows himself? Lennox inquired, his voice barely rising above a whisper, as though the very stones had ears. The lord, with a knowing nod, leaned in closer, revealing the clandestine whispers of the court. The son of Duncan, he began, his voice rich and measured, from whom this tyrant holds the due of birth, lives in the English court. Lennox's eyes widened, the name of Duncan stirring the embers of rebellion within him. Malcolm, he breathed, the name hanging like a talisman in the air. Indeed, the lord confirmed, and he is received by the most pious Edward with such grace that the malevolence of fortune nothing takes from his high respect. The conversation danced around them, the weight of Duncan's son's exile, a silent guest. Lennox couldn't help but marvel at the fortune that had smiled upon Malcolm, even in the shadow of his father's untimely death. "Thither Macduff is gone," the Lord continued, his voice taking on a note of urgency, "to pray the Holy King upon his aid, to wake Northumberland and the warlike Siward." Lennox's curiosity piqued, and he leaned in, the flickering torchlight casting wild shadows on his face. "And what does he seek to achieve with such an alliance?" The Lord's eyes gleamed with a fierce hope, a beacon in the darkness, that by the help of these with him above to ratify the work, we may again give to our tables meat, sleep to our nights. A vision of peace, tantalizingly close yet heartbreakingly distant, shimmered before them. Lennox could almost taste the freedom, the return to a time where feasts was not marred by bloodshed, where knives remained in the kitchen and not in the hands of assassins. "Free from our feasts and banquets, bloody knives," the Lord intoned, the words a solemn prayer. "Do faithful homage and receive free honours, all of which we pine for now." Lennox nodded, the shared longing binding them in a silent pact. "And this report," he ventured, "hath so exasperate the king that he prepares for some attempt of war." The Lord's eyes darkened, shadows deepening in the hollows of his face. "Sent he to Macduff?" Lennox asked, the question a thread of hope. "He did," the Lord replied, his voice tinged with regret. "And with an absolute 'Sir, not I,' the cloudy messenger turns me his back." Lennox could almost see the scene unfold. The messenger's retreat a silent rebuke, a refusal that spoke louder than words, and hums as who should say, "You'll rue the time that clogs me with this answer." Lennox chuckled darkly, the sound a brief balm to the tension that coiled around them. And that well might advise him to a caution, he mused, to hold what distance his wisdom can provide. The Lord nodded, his gaze distant, as though already sending forth the prayers that would accompany Macduff on his perilous journey. "Some holy angel fly to the court of England," Lennox murmured, his voice a quiet invocation, "and unfold his message ere he come." The air hummed with unsaid prayers, the weight of their hopes entwined with the fate of their country. "That a swift blessing may soon return to this our suffering country under a hand accursed," Lennox intoned, his words a beacon in the encroaching darkness. The Lord met Lennox's gaze, a shared understanding passing between them, as tangible as the chill in the air. "I'll send my prayers with him," the Lord vowed, the promise echoing in the stone corridors. Together they stood, figures etched in the half-light, bound by a shared purpose. The shadows lengthened, the night deepening around them, but their resolve burned bright, an unyielding flame in the heart of their beleaguered land. And as they turned to leave, the air seemed to crackle with possibility, the promise of a new dawn lingering on the horizon. With measured steps, they exited the chamber, their footsteps a quiet testament to the hope that still flickered in the heart of Scotland. In the stillness that followed, the castle walls held their secrets close, the whispered plans and fervent prayers weaving a tapestry of rebellion that stretched unseen across the land. And somewhere, in a distant court, a young prince awaited the call to reclaim his birthright, the future hanging in the balance, a story yet unwritten. 4. In a dimly lit cave that feels like the very heart of the storm, thunder crashes outside, echoing ominously through the stone walls. The air is thick with the acrid smell of a boiling concoction, the centre of which is a massive bubbling cauldron. The three witches, clad in tattered, shadowy garments, circle the cauldron with an eerie grace, their movements synchronized like a dark ballet. The first witch, her voice a raspy whisper that seems to curl through the air like smoke, speaks first. "Thrice the brinded cat hath mewed," she intones, her eyes glinting in the flickering firelight. The second witch follows, her voice a low, melodic hum that contrasts sharply with the chaos around them. "Thrice, and once the hedge-pig whined." Finally, the third witch, her tone urgent and impatient, declares, "Harpier cries, 'tis time, 'tis time." With that the ritual begins in earnest. The first witch, her bony fingers deftly reaching into a bag of ghastly ingredients, chants, "Round about the cauldron go, in the poisoned entrails throw." She tosses a toad, as cold and still as the stones it was taken from, into the roiling brew. "Boil thou first i' the charmed pot," the witches chant in unison, their voices rising and falling with a hypnotic rhythm. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire, burn, and cauldron bubble. The second witch takes her turn, her hands moving with practiced precision as she adds her own sinister ingredients. Fillet of a fenny snake, in the cauldron boil and bake, eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog. Each item plops into the cauldron, releasing a hiss of steam that smells of ancient magic and dark intents. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire, burn, and cauldron bubble, they chant again, the words weaving a spell as old as time itself. The third witch, not to be outdone, flings in her own grotesque contributions. Scale of dragon, tooth of wolf, witch's mummy, maw and gulf of the ravined salt sea shark. The air around the cauldron pulses with an unholy energy as she continues, her voice dripping with malice. Make the gruel thick and slab, add thereto a tiger's chaudron for the ingredients of our cauldron. The chorus of double, double, toil and trouble, fire, burn, and cauldron bubble fills the cave, the words a sinister lullaby to their dark work. The second witch concludes the ghastly recipe with a flourish. Cool it with a baboon's blood, then the charm is firm and good. Just then, Hecate, the queen of the witches, sweeps into the cave, her presence regal yet terrifying. "Oh, well done," she exclaims, her voice echoing like a bell tolling doom. "I commend your pains, and everyone shall share it the gains." With a wave of her hand, music fills the cave, an enchanting yet discordant melody that dances through the air like a living thing. The witches sway and sing, their voices a haunting harmony that reverberates through the cavern. And then, as suddenly as she arrived, Hecate vanishes into the shadows, leaving only the echo of her presence behind. The second witch pauses, her senses heightened as a chill runs down her spine. "By the pricking of my thumb, something wicked this way comes. Open locks, whoever knocks." The cave's entrance seems to creak open of its own accord, revealing Macbeth, his face a mask of determination and desperation. "How now, you secret black and midnight hags, what is you do?" he demands, his voice a harsh whisper in the gloom. The witches, unfazed, reply in eerie unison, "A deed without a name." Macbeth, driven by a need for answers, presses them. "I conjure you by that which you profess, answer me." His words spill out in a torrent of urgency, each question a stone cast into the dark waters of fate. The first witch, her eyes gleaming with a mischievous light, responds, "Speak, demand," echoes the second witch. "We'll answer," concludes the third witch. Their words a promise and a threat all at once. Macbeth, his voice tinged with desperation, commands, "Call 'em, let me see 'em." The witches comply, pouring more ghastly ingredients into the cauldron, their chants rising to a fever pitch. As the cauldron bubbles furiously, an apparition in the form of an armed head emerges from the mist, its presence imposing and silent. "Tell me, thou unknown power," Macbeth commands, his eyes locked on the spectral figure. The first witch whispers, "He knows thy thought, hear his speech, but say thou naught." The apparition speaks, its voice a ghostly echo. "Macbeth, Macbeth, Macbeth, beware Macduff, beware the Thane of Fife, dismiss me, enough." With those words it vanishes, leaving Macbeth with more questions than answers. "Whate'er thou art for thy good caution, thanks," Macbeth murmurs, his mind racing. "But one word more." Before he can say more, another apparition, this time a bloody child, rises from the depths of the cauldron. "Macbeth, Macbeth, Macbeth," it calls, its tone eerily childlike yet full of grim portent. Macbeth, trying to mask his apprehension with bravado, quips, "Had I 3 ears, I'd hear thee." The apparition continues, its words a chilling prophecy. "Be bloody, bold and resolute. Laugh to scorn the power of man, for none of woman born shall harm Macbeth." And with that, it too disappears. "Then live Macduff," Macbeth decides, his voice resolute. "But yet I'll make assurance double sure, and take a bond of fate." His mind is made up, even as the witches prepare to show yet more visions of the future. The cauldron bubbles once more, and from its depths emerges a third apparition, a child crowned, holding a tree. Macbeth's eyes widen in disbelief as the vision unfolds before him. The apparition speaks, its voice regal and commanding. "Be lion-mettled, proud, and take no care who chafes, who frets, or where conspirers are. Macbeth shall never vanquished be, until great Birnam wood to high Dunsinane hill shall come against him." "That will never be," Macbeth declares, a mixture of relief and arrogance in his voice. "Who can impress the forest, bid the tree unfix his earth-bound root?" He smiles, his confidence bolstered by the prophecies, even as a flicker of doubt lingers in his heart. Yet, despite the reassurances, Macbeth's mind is not at ease. "Tell me, if your art can tell so much, shall Banquo's issue ever reign in this kingdom?" he demands, his voice rising with frustration. "Seek to know no more," the witches warn, their voices a chorus of finality. "I will be satisfied," Macbeth insists, his desperation turning to anger. "Deny me this, and an eternal curse fall on you." The witches, their patience worn thin, respond with a show of 8 kings, each one more regal than the last. And behind them, the ghostly figure of Banquo himself. Macbeth watches, horror-struck, as the vision plays out, his mind reeling with the implications. "Thou art too like the spirit of Banquo," Macbeth mutters, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and fury. But the vision fades, leaving him alone with his thoughts, the witch's laughter echoing in the darkness. The cave falls silent once more, the only sound the relentless bubbling of the cauldron as Macbeth stands, a solitary figure on the precipice of fate, his future uncertain and his soul weighed down by the spectres of prophecy and ambition. Act 4, Part 2. In a dimly lit chamber, where shadows clung to the walls like whispers of secrets untold, Macbeth stood, his eyes wide with terror and disbelief. The air was thick with a sense of impending doom as he faced the ghastly procession conjured by the weird sisters. They appeared before him like spectres, each carrying a crown upon their heads, a line of kings stretching into eternity. The surreal vision seared itself into his mind. "Down!" Macbeth cried out, as if the apparition could be dispelled by sheer will. His voice echoed in the chamber, a mix of anger and desperation. "Thy crown does sear mine eyeballs." The ghostly kings paraded before him, each one more haunting than the last. "Why do you show me this?" he demanded, his voice trembling with both fear and fury. The first witch, with a voice like the rustling of dry leaves, replied, "Aye, sir, all this is so." Her words were both a confirmation and a challenge, and they hung in the air like a chilling prophecy. The witches began to dance around Macbeth, their movements fluid and otherworldly, the air filled with a haunting melody, as if the very room had become an instrument for their dark magic. "Come, sisters, cheer we up his sprites," the first witch intoned, while the others twirled around him, their laughter echoing like distant thunder. Amidst the eerie music and the witches' vanishing act, Macbeth stood alone once more, the room silent save for the pounding of his own heart. "Where are they? Gone?" he muttered, his voice a whisper of disbelief. "Let this pernicious hour stand aye accursed in the calendar." He turned sharply as the door creaked open, revealing Lennox, who entered with cautious steps. "What's your Grace's will?" Lennox inquired, his voice steady but wary, as if he sensed the turmoil within Macbeth. "Did you see the weird sisters?" Macbeth demanded, his eyes searching Lennox's face for any sign of deceit. "No, my lord," Lennox replied, the sincerity in his voice a stark contrast to the chaos swirling within Macbeth's mind. "Came they not by you?" Macbeth pressed, his frustration palpable. "No, indeed, my lord," Lennox repeated, shaking his head slightly. Macbeth turned away, muttering darkly, "Infected be the air whereon they ride, and damned all those that trust them." His voice carried a bitter edge, like a man betrayed by the very forces he sought to control. He paused, hearing the distant galloping of horses. Who wasn't came by? Lennox, ever the bearer of ill news, answered, "'Tis 2 or 3, my—" "Lord, that bring you word Macduff is fled to England." "Fled to England!" Macbeth exclaimed, his voice rising with a mixture of disbelief and anger. "Aye, my good lord," Lennox confirmed, his expression one of solemn resignation. Macbeth's mind raced, his thoughts a whirlwind of dark intentions. "Time, thou anticipates my dread exploits," he muttered to himself, his resolve hardening with each word. "The flighty purpose never is o'ertook unless the deed go with it." There was a newfound determination in his eyes as he spoke, his voice steady with conviction. "From this moment, the very firstlings of my heart shall be the firstlings of my hand." With each declaration his plan took shape, a plan that would soon drench the earth in innocent blood. "The castle of Macduff I will surprise, seize upon Fife, give to the edge of the sword his wife, his babes, and all unfortunate souls that trace him in his line." Macbeth turned to Lennox, his resolve now unshakable. "But no more sights. Where are these gentlemen? Come, bring me where they are." With that, he strode from the room, his mind set on a course that would lead only to further ruin. Meanwhile, in a room within the castle of Fife, a different sort of tension filled the air. Lady Macduff sat with her young son, her heart heavy with worry and anger. Ross, their trusted friend, stood nearby, his expression one of sympathetic concern. "What had he done to make him fly the land?" Lady Macduff asked, her voice a mix of sorrow and accusation. Ross, ever the diplomat, replied gently, "You must have patience, madam." Lady Macduff, her frustration boiling over, retorted, "He had none. His flight was madness." Her words were sharp, a reflection of her own inner turmoil. When our actions do not, our fears do make us traitors. Ross, trying to offer some comfort, said, "You know not whether it was his wisdom or his fear." "Wisdom!" Lady Macduff scoffed, her voice tinged with bitterness. "To leave his wife, to leave his babes, his mansion, and his titles, in a place from whence himself does fly." Her words were a plea for understanding, though none seemed forthcoming. The conversation shifted, turning to her son, a bright-eyed boy with questions of his own. "Was my father a traitor, mother?" he asked innocently. "Aye, that he was," Lady Macduff replied, though the words seemed to catch in her throat. The child's curiosity was unquenchable. "What is a traitor?" Lady Macduff, with a sigh, explained. "Why, one that swears and lies." "And be all traitors that do so?" the boy pressed, his eyes wide with wonder. "Every one that does so is a traitor," she affirmed, her voice softening as she gazed at her son. The boy, ever the thinker, pondered aloud. "Then the liars and swearers are fools, for there are liars and swearers enow to beat the honest men and hang up them." Lady Macduff's heart ached at his words, a mixture of pride and sorrow swelling within her. "Now God help thee, poor monkey," she murmured, reaching out to tousle his hair. Their exchange was interrupted by the entrance of a messenger, his expression urgent and grave. "Bless you, fair dame," he began, his voice a hurried whisper. "I doubt some danger does approach you nearly." Lady Macduff, sensing the gravity of his words, asked, "Whither should I fly? I have done no harm." But even as she spoke, the shadows seemed to lengthen, and danger whispered through the halls like a gathering storm. 4. Part 3. In the dimly lit confines of Lady Macduff's chamber, the air hung heavy with tension. A storm seemed to brew outside, matching the turmoil within the walls of her home. Lady Macduff paced the room, her heart a tempest of fear and frustration. Her thoughts were a whirlwind, reflecting on the chaos that had overtaken Scotland. A world where doing harm seemed to earn praise, while doing good was often dismissed as foolishness. She mused aloud, her voice carrying a mix of defiance and sorrow. "But I remember now," she murmured, "I am in this earthly world, where to do harm is often laudable, to do good sometime accounted dangerous folly." Her eyes darted toward the door, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Why then, alas, do I put up that womanly defence, to say I have done no harm? What are these faces?" And then, as if summoned by her words, the door creaked open. Shadows stretched across the floor as the murderers entered, their presence as dark and menacing as their intentions. The first murderer, his voice a chilling drawl, broke the silence. "Where is your husband?" Lady Macduff stood tall, her gaze unwavering. "I hope, in no place so unsanctified where such as thou mayest find him." The first murderer sneered, his lips curling with disdain. "He's a traitor." From the corner of the room, her son, a brave little soul with fire in his eyes, piped up defiantly, "Thou liest, thou shag-eared villain!" The murderer, eyes narrowing with malevolence, lunged forward. "What, you egg?" he spat, his dagger flashing in the dim light. The young boy cried out, "Young fry of treachery," before the blade found its mark. Lady Macduff's heart shattered as she watched her son crumble to the floor, his small voice whispering, "He has killed me, mother. Run away, I pray you." His words were a plea, a desperate wish for her safety, with a cry of murder. Lady Macduff fled the room, her skirts billowing behind her as the murderers gave chase. The echoes of her footsteps and the murderous intent of her pursuers faded into the distance, leaving the room in a haunting silence. Across the sea, in the safety of England, the scene was quite different. Beneath the sprawling sky outside the king's palace, Malcolm and Macduff walked side by side, their hearts heavy with the burden of their homeland's plight. Malcolm, a young man with the weight of a kingdom on his shoulders, turned to Macduff with a sombre expression. "Let us seek out some desolate shade, and there weep our sad bosoms empty." But Macduff, ever the warrior, shook his head with a resolve that burned bright against the bleakness. "Let us rather hold fast the mortal sword, and, like good men, bestride our downfallen birthdom. Each new morn new widows howl, new orphans cry, new sorrows strike heaven on the face, that it resounds as if it felt with Scotland, and yelled out like syllable of dolor." Malcolm nodded, his eyes reflecting the shared pain of their people. "What I believe, I'll wail, what no, believe, and what I can redress, as I shall find the time to friend, I will." Macduff's heart ached with the longing for justice, but Malcolm's words stirred a flicker of hope. However, Malcolm's next words were like a dagger to his heart. "This tyrant, whose sole name blisters our tongues, was once thought honest. You have loved him well. He hath not touched you yet," Malcolm said, his voice shadowed with doubt. "I am young, but something you may deserve of him through me, and wisdom to offer up a weak, poor, innocent lamb to appease an angry God." Macduff, stung by the accusation, insisted, "I am not treacherous." "But Macbeth is," Malcolm countered, his gaze piercing. "A good and virtuous nature may recoil in an imperial charge." Macduff felt his hope slipping away, but Malcolm continued, testing him, probing the depths of his loyalty. "Why in that rawness left you wife and child, those precious motives, those strong knots of love, without leave-taking?" Malcolm asked, his words a challenge and a plea. Macduff's heart clenched, the image of his family haunting his every step. "Bleed, bleed, poor country," he cried, his voice rising with anguish. "Great tyranny, lay thou thy basest shore, for goodness dare not check thee." Malcolm, seeing the raw emotion in Macduff, softened. "Be not offended," he said gently. "I speak not as in absolute fear of you. I think our country sinks beneath the yoke. It weeps, it bleeds, and each new day a gash is added to her wounds." Macduff listened, the fire of a righteous cause igniting within him. What should he be? He asked, his voice edged with a desperate hope. Malcolm took a deep breath, revealing the darkness he feared within himself. "It is myself, I mean," he admitted, his words heavy with self-loathing, "in whom I know all the particulars of vice so grafted that when they shall be opened, black Macbeth will seem as pure as snow." Macduff's eyes widened, shock and disbelief wrestling within him. But Malcolm wasn't finished. He spoke of his own perceived flaws, each vice laid bare, a stark contrast to the noble image of his father. "Yet do not fear," Macduff urged, his voice steadying. "Scotland hath foisons to fill up your will of your mere own. All these are portable, with other graces weighed." In that moment, Malcolm's eyes met Macduff's, a silent understanding passing between them, a shared determination to save their homeland, to stand against the darkness encroaching upon Scotland. Together, they would light the way back to a brighter future, their bond forged in the fires of adversity. Act 4, Part 4. In the dimly lit room, where shadows played along the stone walls like whispers of the past, Macduff stood, a man burdened by a heart full of grief and a spirit heavy with betrayal. The air was thick with tension, as if the very atmosphere held its breath, waiting for the words that would break the silence. Macduff's voice, raw and trembling, broke through. "Fare thee well. These evils thou repeat'st upon thyself have banished me from Scotland. O my breast, thy hope ends." Here, Malcolm, standing opposite him, watched with a mix of empathy and determination. His eyes, sharp yet warm, met Macduff's gaze. "Macduff," he began, his voice steady and reassuring, "this noble passion, child of integrity, hath from my soul wiped the black scruples, reconciled my thoughts to thy good truth and honour." Malcolm stepped forward, his presence a beacon of hope in the gloom. "Devilish Macbeth, by many of these trains hath sought to win me into his power, and modest wisdom plucks me from over-credulous haste. But God above deal between thee and me," he declared, his words carrying the weight of a promise. Even as he spoke, Malcolm's demeanour shifted, the shadows of doubt lifting from his face. "For even now I put myself to thy direction, and unspeak mine own detraction. Here abjure the taints and blames I laid upon myself, for strangers to my nature." He paused, allowing the gravity of his words to settle. "I am yet unknown to woman, never was forsworn, scarcely have coveted what was mine own, at no time broke my faith, would not betray the devil to his fellow, and delight no less in truth than life." Macduff's eyes widened slightly, his heart catching on the sincerity of Malcolm's confession. Malcolm continued, his voice unwavering. "My first false speaking was this upon myself. What I am truly is thine and my poor country's to command." A sense of resolution filled the room as Malcolm added, "Whither indeed before thy here approach, old Seward with 10,000 warlike men, already at a point, was setting forth. Now we'll together, and the chance of goodness be like our warranted quarrel." He paused, noticing Macduff's silence. "Why are you silent?" Macduff, wrestling with the emotions swirling within him, managed a quiet reply. "Such welcome and unwelcome things at once, 'tis hard to reconcile." The tension was momentarily interrupted by the entrance of a doctor who shuffled in, his presence adding a note of urgency to the scene. Malcolm turned to him, curiosity piqued. "Well, more anon. Comes the king forth, I pray you?" The doctor, a man of few words but great knowledge, nodded. "Aye, sir. There are a crew of wretched souls that stay his cure. Their malady convinces the great assay of art. But at his touch, such sanctity hath heaven given his hand, they presently amend." Malcolm nodded, grateful. "I thank you, doctor." With that, the doctor took his leave, slipping back into the shadows from whence he came. Macduff, intrigued, turned to Malcolm. "What's the disease he means?" Malcolm explained, his voice tinged with reverence. "'Tis called the evil, a most miraculous work in this good king, which often, since my here remain in England, I have seen him do." He spoke of the king's divine grace, how he healed the sick with a touch, hanging golden stamps about their necks, and leaving the healing benediction to the succeeding royalty. "He hath a heavenly gift of prophecy, and sundry blessings hang about his throne," Malcolm concluded, the admiration in his voice palpable. Just then the door creaked open once more, and Ross entered, his face a canvas of weariness and grim determination. Macduff brightened, recognizing his cousin. "My ever-gentle cousin, welcome hither." Malcolm, observing the exchange, spoke with a fervent wish. "I know him now. Good God, betimes remove the means that makes us strangers." Ross, acknowledging the sentiment, offered a solemn, "Sir, amen," but the weight of his message hung heavily in the air. Macduff's concern for his homeland bubbled to the surface. Stands Scotland where it did? Ross's response was laden with sorrow. Alas, poor country, almost afraid to know itself. It cannot be called our mother, but our grave. He painted a picture of a land drenched in despair, where joy had become a distant memory and sorrow was a constant companion. As Ross spoke of the turmoil and grief engulfing Scotland, Macduff's heart ached with the weight of his homeland's suffering. Malcolm, keen to know more, pressed on. "What's the newest grief?" Ross sighed, each breath carrying the burden of his news. "That of an hour's age doth hiss the speaker, each minute teems a new one." Macduff's thoughts turned to his family, hope mingling with dread. "How does my wife?" Ross replied, his voice steady. "Why, well." Macduff, anxious, pressed further. "And all my children?" "Well, too," Ross answered, but his tone carried an undercurrent that Macduff couldn't quite place. Fear gnawed at Macduff's heart. The tyrant has not battered at their peace. Ross, with a pause that spoke volumes, finally said, "No, they were well at peace when I did leave 'em." Macduff, sensing something amiss, urged Ross to speak plainly. "Be not a niggard of your speech. How goes't?" Ross, gathering his resolve, began. "When I came hither to transport the tidings, which I have heavily borne, there ran a rumour of many worthy fellows that were out." He spoke of the gathering storm in Scotland, of the dire need for aid. Malcolm, hearing this, offered a glimmer of hope. "Beat their comfort, we are coming thither. Gracious England hath lent us good Seward and 10,000 men." Ross, burdened with his message, wished he could bring comfort. "Would I could answer this comfort with the like, but I have words that would be howled out in the desert air." Macduff, sensing the gravity of Ross's words, inquired, "What concern they? The general cause? Or is it a fee-grief due to some single breast?" Ross, with a heavy heart, confessed, "No mind that's honest, but in it shares some woe, though the main part pertains to you alone." Macduff, his heart pounding, urged, "If it be mine, keep it not from me, quickly let me have it." Ross, the weight of his message almost too much to bear, finally spoke the words that would shatter Macduff's world. "Let not your ears despise my tongue forever, which shall possess them with the heaviest sound that ever yet they heard." Macduff, his voice barely above a whisper, guessed at the truth. I guess at it." Ross, his voice trembling, delivered the devastating news. "Your castle is surprised, your wife and babes savagely slaughtered." Silence filled the room, a silence so profound that it seemed time itself had paused, holding its breath in the face of such tragedy. Malcolm, witnessing Macduff's grief, urged him to express it. "What, man? Ne'er pull your hat upon your brows, give sorrow words." Macduff, his soul laid bare, cried out, "My children too?" Ross, his heart aching for his friend, confirmed, "Wife, children, servants, all that could be found." Macduff, his voice breaking, lamented, "And I must be from thence, my wife killed too?" Ross, his voice a whisper, replied, "I have said." Malcolm, stepping forward, offered what comfort he could. "Be comforted. Let's make us medsigns of our great revenge to cure this deadly grief." Macduff, his grief turning to a steely resolve, declared, "He has no children. All my pretty ones? Did you say all? Oh, hell-kite, all? What, all my pretty chickens and their dam at one fell swoop?" Malcolm, urging strength, encouraged, "Dispute it like a man." Macduff, his voice filled with a mix of sorrow and determination, replied, "I shall do so, but I must also feel it as a man." He spoke of the memories of his family, of the love and joy that had been so cruelly taken from him. Did heaven look on, and would not take their part? Sinful Macduff, they were all struck for thee. Malcolm, seeing the fire of vengeance in Macduff's eyes, offered a final piece of advice. Be this the whetstone of your sword. And so, in that room where shadows danced and the weight of loss hung heavy, a new resolve was born. Macduff, his heart shattered but his spirit unbroken, prepared to face the storm, to seek justice for his family and his land. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but with Malcolm by his side and a newfound strength burning within, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Act 4, Part 5. In the dimly lit chamber, the air was thick with the weight of grief and the simmering heat of vengeance. Macduff stood at the centre, his eyes brimming with unshed tears, as if the very room itself held its breath, waiting for the breaking storm. The shadows seemed to dance ominously on the stone walls, reflecting the turmoil within his heart. Let grief convert to anger, Macduff muttered to himself, his voice a low, throaty growl. Blunt not the heart, enrage it. His hands clenched into fists, his knuckles white with the effort of containing the tempest of emotions that threatened to consume him. He turned sharply, his gaze fierce and unyielding. "Oh, I could play the woman with mine eyes," he declared, his voice rising with a mix of self-reproach and determination, "and braggart with my tongue." He paused, the intensity of his words hanging heavily in the air. "But gentle heavens," he implored, looking skyward as if beseeching divine intervention, "cut short all intermission, front to front bring thou this fiend of Scotland and myself." The room seemed to shudder with the force of his resolve. Macduff's heart was a cauldron of anger and sorrow, and his spirit was aflame with the desire for justice. "Within my sword's length set him," he vowed, envisioning the confrontation that would satiate his thirst for retribution. If he escape, heaven forgive him too. It was then that Malcolm, the rightful heir to the Scottish throne, stepped forward. His presence was a beacon of hope, a promise of restoration. "This tune goes." "Manly," Malcolm remarked, a faint smile playing on his lips, though his eyes were serious. There was a strength in his words, a quiet assurance that their cause was just and their resolve unwavering. "Come, go we to the king," Malcolm urged, his voice steady and commanding. "Our power is ready, our lack is nothing but our leave." His words were a rallying cry, a call to arms for all who would stand against the tyranny of Macbeth. Macduff nodded, the fire in his eyes undiminished. Together, they were united in their purpose, their spirits entwined in the shared determination to see justice served. "Macbeth is ripe for shaking," Malcolm continued, his voice carrying the weight of prophecy. "And the powers above put on their instruments." The air crackled with anticipation, as if the very universe was aligning to aid them in their quest. "Receive what cheer you may," Malcolm advised, his tone softening with compassion. "The night is long that never finds the day." With those words, they exited the chamber, their footsteps echoing with the promise of action, their hearts steeled against the darkness that lay ahead. The world outside was a tapestry of shadows and light, the twilight hour casting an ethereal glow over the land. As they walked side by side, their minds were a whirlwind of thoughts, each step bringing them closer to the inevitable confrontation. The path before them was fraught with danger, yet their resolve was unbreakable, their courage a beacon in the encroaching night. The chill of the evening air was a stark contrast to the heat of their resolve, each breath a testament to their unwavering determination. Macduff's heart pounded in his chest, a relentless drumbeat of anticipation and resolve. His grief had indeed transformed, metamorphosed into a force of nature, untamed and unyielding. Malcolm, walking with the poise of a leader born, cast a sidelong glance at Macduff. "We will see this through," he assured, his voice a steady anchor amidst the tempest. "For Scotland, for justice." "For justice," Macduff echoed, his voice a solemn vow, an unbreakable promise to himself and the spirits of those he had lost. Together they would challenge the darkness, confront the usurper, and reclaim the light that had been stolen from their land. The shadows lengthened as they made their way through the corridors of power, their presence a harbinger of change, a whisper of hope carried on the winds of destiny. Every step forward was a step towards the dawn, a promise that the night would not last forever, that the day would indeed break through the shroud of tyranny. And so the stage was set for the final act, the players poised at the brink of history, their fates entwined in the tapestry of a nation reborn. The night was long, but the dawn was inevitable, a promise that no shadow could forever conceal. With unwavering resolve, they marched onward, their spirits unbowed, their purpose clear. The world awaited their triumph, the dawn of a new day, a testament to the power of justice, courage, and the indomitable human spirit. Act Fave. In the dimly lit room of Dunsinane Castle, the air was thick with the tension that even the flickering candles seemed to acknowledge, casting long shadows that danced ominously on the stone walls. The Doctor of Physic, a man of rationality and science, stood beside a waiting gentlewoman whose eyes were heavy with sleepless nights. Despite the late hour, her resolve was unyielding. "I have 2 nights watched with you," the doctor murmured, his voice tinged with a hint of skepticism, "but can perceive no truth in your report. When was it she last walked?" The gentlewoman sighed softly, her eyes darting towards the bedchamber where Lady Macbeth lay. "Since His Majesty went into the field," she replied, her voice no louder than a whisper. "I have seen her rise from her bed, throw her nightgown upon her, unlock her closet, take forth paper, fold it, write upon, read it, afterwards seal it, and again return to bed. Yet all this while in a most fast sleep." The doctor pondered this revelation, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "A great perturbation in nature," he mused, "to receive at once the benefit of sleep and do the effects of watching. In this slumbery agitation, besides her walking and other actual performances, what at any time have you heard her say?" The gentlewoman hesitated, her loyalty to her lady evident in her reluctance to speak. "That, sir, which I will not report after her." "You may to me," he urged gently, "and 'tis most meet you should." She shook her head, her conviction unshaken. "Neither to you nor anyone, having no witness to confirm my speech." Just then the door creaked open, and Lady Macbeth entered, ghostly pale and clutching a taper as though it were her lifeline. Her eyes, wide and unseeing, stared ahead, and the gentlewoman whispered urgently, "Lo you, here she comes. This is her very guise, and upon my life, fast asleep. Observe her. Stand close." The doctor watched intently as Lady Macbeth moved with an eerie grace, her steps guided by some unseen force. "How came she by that light?" he inquired, his curiosity piqued. "Why, it stood by her," the gentlewoman explained. "She has light by her continually, 'tis her command." The doctor nodded, noting the peculiar behaviour. "You see her eyes are open." "Aye," the gentlewoman confirmed, but their scents are shut. Lady Macbeth began to rub her hands together, a compulsive gesture that seemed to hold some desperate significance. "What is it she does now?" the doctor asked, his eyes narrowing as he observed her. "It is an accustomed action with her," the gentlewoman replied, her voice tinged with sadness. "To seem thus washing her hands. I have known her continue in this a quarter of an hour." Lady Macbeth's voice broke the silence, laden with an agony that seemed to echo from the depths of her soul. "Yet here's a spot." The doctor leaned forward, intent on capturing every word. "Hark, she speaks. I will set down what comes from her to satisfy my remembrance the more strongly." "Out, damned spot!" Lady Macbeth cried, her voice rising in desperation. "Out, I say. 1, 2. Why, then 'tis time to do't. Hell is murky. Fie, my lord, fie. A soldier and afeard. What need we fear who knows it when none can call our power to account? Yet who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him?" The doctor exchanged a glance with the gentlewoman, his expression a mix of shock and pity. "Do you mark that? The Thane of Fife had a wife. Where is she now?" Lady Macbeth continued, her words spilling forth in a torrent of guilt and madness. "What? Will these hands ne'er be clean? No more o' that, my lord, no more o' that. You mar all with this starting." The doctor shook his head, his voice sombre. Go to, you have known what you should not." The gentlewoman's eyes were downcast, her heart heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. "She has spoke what she should not, I am sure of that. Heaven knows what she has known." Lady Macbeth's lament grew more poignant, her voice breaking with each word. "Here's the smell of the blood still. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand. Oh, oh, oh!" The doctor could not hide his concern, his thoughts swirling with the implications of her confessions. "What a sigh is there! The heart is sorely charged." "I would not have such a heart in my bosom for the dignity of the whole body," the gentlewoman murmured, her empathy evident. "Well, well, well," the doctor muttered, his mind racing to piece together the puzzle of Lady Macbeth's unravelling sanity. "Pray God it be, sir," the gentlewoman added, her hope a fragile thing. "This disease is beyond my practice," the doctor admitted, his voice filled with an uncharacteristic helplessness. "Yet I have known those which have walked in their sleep, who have died holily in their beds." Lady Macbeth's voice trembled, her words a haunting echo of her past deeds. "Wash your hands, put on your nightgown, look not so pale. I tell you yet again, Banquo's buried, he cannot come out on's grave." "Even so?" the doctor questioned, though he already suspected the truth. To bed, Lady Macbeth commanded, her voice fading as she moved toward the door. "There's knocking at the gate. Come, 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 give me your hand. What's done cannot be undone. To bed, to bed, to bed." As she vanished into the shadows, the doctor turned to the gentlewoman, his expression grave. "Will she go now to bed?" "Directly," the gentlewoman confirmed, her voice resigned. The doctor sighed, his thoughts a tumult of worry and resignation. Foul whisperings are abroad. Unnatural deeds do breed unnatural troubles. Infected minds to their deaf pillows will discharge their secrets. More needs she the divine than the physician. God, God, forgive us all. Look after her. Remove from her the means of all annoyance, and still keep eyes upon her. So good night. My mind she has mated, and amazed my sight. I think but dare not speak. "Good night, good doctor," the gentlewoman replied, her voice a quiet benediction as they both exited the room, leaving behind the echoes of Lady Macbeth's restless soul. Meanwhile, in the countryside near Dunsinane, The air buzzed with the anticipation of imminent conflict. Menteith and his companions, Caithness, Angus, and Lennox, marched with purpose, the sounds of drums and colours filling the air with a sense of unyielding determination. "The English power is near," Menteith declared, his voice carrying over the rhythmic march of feet. "Led on by Malcolm, his uncle Siward, and the good Macduff. Revenges burn in them, for their dear causes would to the bleeding and the grim alarm excite the mortified man. Near Birnam Wood shall we well meet them," Angus added, his eyes scanning the horizon. "That way are they coming." Caithness raised a question that had lingered in the minds of many. "Who knows if Donalbain be with his brother?" "For certain, sir, he is not," Lennox confirmed, holding up a file of names. "I have a file of all the gentry. There is Siward's son and many unrough youths that even now protest their first of manhood." Menteith's expression hardened as he considered their tyrannical foe. "What does the tyrant—" "Great Dunsinane he strongly fortifies," Caithness replied. "Some say he's mad. Others, that lesser hate him, do call it valiant fury, but for certain he cannot buckle his distempered cause within the belt of rule." Angus nodded, his thoughts aligning with the grim reality. Now does he feel his secret murders sticking on his hands. Now minutely revolts upbraid his faith breach. Those he commands move only in command, nothing in love. Now does he feel his title hang loose about him, like a giant's robe upon a dwarfish thief. Who then shall blame his pestered senses to recoil and start, Menteith mused, when all that is within him does condemn itself for being there? "Well, march we on," Caithness urged, "to give obedience where 'tis truly owed. Meet we the Medicine of the sickly weal, and with him pour we in our country's purge, each drop of us. Or so much as it needs to dew the sovereign flower and drown the weeds," Lennox added with determination. "Make we our march towards Birnam." And with that they continued their march, hearts steeled against the tyranny they sought to vanquish, each step a testament to their unwavering resolve. Back at Dunsinane, in a room within the castle, Macbeth stood surrounded by the doctor and his attendants. His expression was hardened, resolve etched into every line on his face. "Bring me no more reports," he commanded with a dismissive wave. "Let them fly all, till Birnam Wood remove to Dunsinane. I cannot taint with fear." As the winds of destiny blew ever closer, the stage was set for the final act, where the fates of kings and kingdoms would be decided in the shadow of Birnam Wood. Act Viv, Part 2. In the dimly lit halls of Dunsinane Castle, the air was thick with tension. Macbeth, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and defiance, paced the stone floor with an intensity that mirrored the storm brewing within him. His once vibrant eyes now seemed hollow, burdened by the weight of his own ambition and the prophecies that haunted him. He paused, staring into the distance as if trying to pierce through the veil of fate itself. "What's the boy Malcolm?" he muttered to himself, his voice echoing softly against the cold walls. "Was he not born of woman? The spirits that know all mortal consequences have pronounced me thus. Fear not, Macbeth, no man that's born of woman shall e'er have power upon thee." A smirk tugged at the corner of his lips, a flicker of confidence in an otherwise weary soul. "Then fly, false thanes, and mingle with the English epicures. The mind I sway by and the heart I bear shall never sag with doubt nor shake with fear." Just then, a servant scurried into the room, his face pale as if he'd seen a ghost. Macbeth turned on him, his voice a sharp bark. "The devil damn thee, black, thou cream-faced loon, where got'st thou that goose look?" The servant stammered. "There is 10,000 geese, villain?" Macbeth interrupted with a sneer. "Soldiers, sir," the servant corrected, his voice barely a whisper, eyes cast down. "Go prick thy face and overread thy fear, thou lily-livered boy." "What soldiers, Patch?" Macbeth demanded, his patience thinning. "Death of thy soul, those linen cheeks of thine are counsellors to fear. What soldiers, Wayface?" "The English force, so please you," the servant replied, his voice trembling. Macbeth waved him away with a dismissive hand. "Take thy face hence." As the servant disappeared, Macbeth called out, "Satan!" His voice carried a hint of desperation. "I am sick at heart when I behold Satan, I say. This push will cheer me ever, or deceit me now. I have lived long enough. My way of life is fallen into the sere, the yellow leaf, and that which should accompany old age, as honour, love, obedience, troops of friends, I must not look to have. But in their stead, curses, not loud but deep, mouth honour, breath, which the poor heart would fain deny, and dare not." Satan, his loyal attendant, entered, sensing the turmoil in his master. "What's your gracious pleasure?" "What news more?" Macbeth inquired, his voice softer, almost pleading. "All is confirmed, my lord, which was reported," Satan replied, his tone steady. Macbeth squared his shoulders, a grim resolve settling over him. "I'll fight till from my bones my flesh be hacked. Give me my armour." "'Tis not needed yet," Satan advised, though he knew it was futile. "I'll put it on," Macbeth insisted, as if the armour could shield him from his own fears. "Send out more horses, scur the country round, hang those that talk of fear. Give me mine armour. How does your patient, doctor?" The doctor, who had been observing the scene, spoke up. "Not so sick, my lord, as she is troubled with thick-coming fancies that keep her from her rest." "Cure her of that," Macbeth commanded, his voice tinged with desperation. "Canst thou not minister to a mind diseased? Pluck from the memory a rooted sorrow, raise out the written troubles of the brain, and with some sweet oblivious antidote cleanse the stuffed bosom of that perilous stuff which weighs upon the heart?" The doctor shook his head, a sigh escaping his lips. "Therein the patient must minister to himself." "Throw physic to the dogs, I'll none of it." Macbeth turned away, frustration evident in every line of his body. "Come, put mine armour on, give me my staff," Satan send out. "Doctor, the thanes fly from me. Come, sir, dispatch. If thou couldst, doctor, cast the water of my land, find her disease, and purge it to a sound and pristine health, I would applaud thee to the very echo, that should applaud again. Pull't off, I say. What rhubarb, senna, or what purgative drug would scour these English hence? Hearest thou of them?" "Ay, my good lord. Your royal preparation makes us hear something," the doctor replied, albeit cautiously. "Bring it after me. I will not be afraid of death and bane till Burnham Forest come to Dunsinane," Macbeth declared, defiance lacing his words as he strode out, his men following in his wake. Once the room was empty, the doctor lingered for a moment, a look of pity on his face. "Were I from Dunsinane away and clear, profit again should hardly draw me here," he murmured before slipping away. Meanwhile, in the countryside near Dunsinane, the air was charged with anticipation. Malcolm, accompanied by old Seward, his son, Macduff, and a host of soldiers, surveyed the land. "Cousins, I hope the days are near at hand that Chambers will be safe," Malcolm said, hope lighting his eyes. "We doubt it nothing," Menteith replied confidently. Seward glanced around. What wood is this before us? The wood of Burnham, Menteith answered, his gaze steady. Malcolm's eyes gleamed with a clever idea. Let every soldier hew him down a bough and bear't before him. Thereby shall we shadow the numbers of our host, and make discovery err in report of us. It shall be done, the soldiers echoed, their spirits lifted by the cunning plan. We learn no other but the confident tyrant keeps still in Dunsinane, and will endure our setting down before it, Seward remarked, the anticipation of battle thrumming through him. 'Tis his main hope, for where there is advantage to be given, both more and less have given him the revolt, and none serve with him but constrained things, whose hearts are absent too, Malcolm noted, his voice carrying the weight of their righteous cause. Let our just censures attend the true event, and put we on industrious soldiership, Macduff urged, his determination unwavering. The time approaches that will with due decision make us know what we shall say we have and what we owe, Seward said solemnly. Thoughts speculative their unsure hopes relate, but certain issue strokes must arbitrate, towards which advance the war. With that, the army moved forward, a tide of justice ready to crash against the walls of tyranny. Back within the fortress of Dunsinane, Macbeth stood with Satan and his soldiers, a defiant figure amidst the gathering storm. Hang out our banners on the outward walls. The cry is still, they come. Our castle's strength will laugh a siege to scorn. Here let them lie till famine and the ague eat them up. Were they not forced with those that should be ours, we might have met them dareful, beard to beard, and beat them backward home. But then a cry of women pierced the air, shattering the tense silence. Macbeth's brow furrowed. What is that noise? It is the cry of women, my good lord, Satan replied, an edge of concern in his voice as he exited to investigate. Left alone, Macbeth felt a strange numbness settle over him. I have almost forgot the taste of fears. The time has been, my senses would have cooled to hear a night shriek, and my fell of hair would at a dismal treatise rouse and stir as life were in't. I have supped full with horrors. Direness, familiar to my slaughterous thoughts, cannot once start me. Satan returned, his face shadowed by the weight of the news he bore. Wherefore was that cry? The Queen, my lord, is dead, Satan said, his voice a sombre echo in the room. Macbeth paused, the words hanging heavily in the air. She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. His voice, once so full of ambition and fury, softened to a whisper. In that moment, all the grand designs and fiendish plots seemed to melt away, leaving only a man, stripped bare before the inexorable march of time. As the echoes of his words faded, the castle walls loomed large around him, bearing witness to the unravelling of a tragic king. Act 5, Part 3. In the shadowed halls of Dunsinane Castle, the air was thick with tension. The dimly lit corridors whispered tales of betrayal and ominous prophecies. Macbeth, the once valiant warrior turned tyrant king, paced the stone floor, his brow furrowed with a mix of anger and desperation. The weight of his deeds hung heavily upon him, like chains dragging him into the abyss of madness. Out, out, brief candle, Macbeth muttered to himself, the flame of a single candle flickering beside him. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. His voice echoed, ghostly, through the empty hall, each word dripping with a haunting resignation. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. As if summoned by his soliloquy, a messenger burst into the room, breathless and wide-eyed. The young man's presence was like a storm disrupting the eerie calm. "Thou comest to use thy tongue, thy story quickly," Macbeth commanded, his voice sharp and expectant. "Gracious my lord," the messenger stammered, trying to catch his breath. "I should report that which I say I saw, but know not how to do it." "Well, say, sir," Macbeth urged impatiently. The messenger glanced nervously at the floor, then back at Macbeth. "As I did stand my watch upon the hill, I looked toward Burnham, and anon, methought, the wood began to move." "Liar and slave," Macbeth spat, his eyes blazing with fury. The room seemed to darken with his wrath. "Let me endure your wrath, if it be not so," the messenger pleaded, standing his ground. "Within this 3 mile may you see it coming, I say a moving grove." Macbeth's face twisted with disbelief and dread. "If thou speak'st false, upon the next tree shalt thou hang alive, till famine cling thee," he threatened, his voice a low growl. "If thy speech be sooth, I care not if thou dost for me as much." He turned away, his mind racing. I pull in resolution and begin to doubt the equivocation of the fiend that lies like truth. Fear not, till Burnham wood do come to Dunsinane. And now a wood comes toward Dunsinane. He paused, the weight of the prophecy crashing down upon him like a tidal wave. "Arm, arm, and out!" he roared, the echoes of his command bouncing off the stone walls. "If this which he avouches does appear, there is nor flying hence, nor tarrying here. I 'gin to be aweary of the sun, and wish the estate of the world were now undone." With a resolve as fierce as the storm brewing outside, Macbeth shouted, "Ring the alarum bell! Blow, wind, come rack! At least we'll die with harness on our back." And with that he stormed out, a tempest in human form. Outside, on the plains before Dunsinane, Malcolm, Old Seward, and Macduff advanced with their army, each soldier carrying a leafy bough from Burnham Wood. The makeshift camouflage fluttered in the breeze, a surreal forest marching toward the castle. "Now near enough," Malcolm declared, his voice steady and commanding. "Your leafy screens throw down and show like those you are." The soldiers cast aside their branches, revealing a formidable force ready to reclaim their land. "You, worthy uncle, shall with my cousin, your right noble son, lead our first battle, worthy Macduff, and we shall take upon's what else remains to do, according to our order." "Fare you well," Seward replied, his voice filled with the courage of a seasoned warrior. "Do we but find the tyrant's power tonight? Let us be beaten if we cannot fight." "Make all our trumpets speak, give them all breath, those clamorous harbingers of blood and death," Macduff added, his eyes aflame with righteous fury. Meanwhile, back in the castle, Macbeth prepared for the inevitable confrontation. "They have tied me to a stake," he muttered, steeling himself for the fight. "I cannot fly, but, bear-like, I must fight the course." His mind raced to the prophecy. "What's he that was not born of woman? Such a one am I to fear, or none." The young Seward, bursting with youthful bravado, confronted Macbeth, his sword gleaming in the dim light. "What is thy name?" he demanded. "Thou'lt be afraid to hear it," Macbeth replied, a dark smirk playing on his lips. "No, though thou call'st thyself a hotter name than any is in hell," young Seward shot back defiantly. "My name's Macbeth," the tyrant declared, his voice thunderous. The devil himself could not pronounce a title more hateful to mine ear, young Siward retorted, his grip tightening on his sword. No, nor more fearful, Macbeth countered, his voice dripping with malice. Thou liest, abhorred tyrant. With my sword I'll prove the lie thou speak'st, young Siward cried, launching into battle. Their swords clashed violently, the sound echoing through the halls. But it was Macbeth who emerged victorious, young Siward falling to the ground, his life snuffed out like a candle in the wind. Thou wast born of woman, Macbeth sneered, staring down at the fallen warrior. But swords I smile at, weapons laughter scorn, brandished by man that's of a woman born. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Macduff searched desperately for Macbeth, the ghosts of his family urging him on. That way the noise is, he whispered to himself, determination etched into every line of his face. Tyrant, show thy face. If thou beest slain and with no stroke of mine, my wife and children's ghosts will haunt me still. The echoes of battle filled the air, a cacophony of clashing steel and shouted commands. At last, Macduff found Macbeth, the two warriors facing each other in a clearing shrouded in mist. "Turn, hellhound, turn!" Macduff shouted, his voice a thunderclap in the silence. "Of all men else I have avoided thee," Macbeth confessed, his voice low and weary. "But get thee back. My soul is too much charged with blood of thine already." "I have no words," Macduff replied, his voice a growl of pure rage. "My voice is in my sword, thou bloodier villain than terms can give thee out." Their swords met with a resounding crash, each blow fueled by the weight of their pasts. "Thou losest labour," Macbeth taunted, parrying Macduff's strikes with ease. "As easy mayst thou the entrenchant air with thy keen sword impress as make me bleed. Let fall thy blade on vulnerable crests. I bear a charmed life, which must not yield to one of woman born." But Macduff's next words cut deeper than any blade. "Despair thy charm," he declared, his voice like a judge's gavel. "And let the angel whom thou still hast served tell thee, Macduff was from his mother's womb untimely ripped." Macbeth staggered back, the revelation striking him like lightning. "Accursed be that tongue that tells me so," he gasped, his bravado crumbling. "For it hath cowed my better part of man, and be these juggling fiends no more believed that palter with us in a double sense, that keep the word of promise to our ear and break it to our hope." Desperation clawed at him, but he refused to yield. "I'll not fight with thee." "Then yield thee, coward," Macduff sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "And live to be the show and gaze of the time. We'll have thee, as our rarer monsters are, painted upon a pole and underwrit, 'Here may you see the tyrant.'" "I will not yield," Macbeth snarled, his resolve hardening once more. To kiss the ground before young Malcolm's feet, and to be baited with the rabble's curse. "Though Birnam wood be come to Dunsinane, and thou opposed, being of no woman born, yet I will try the last. Before my body I throw my warlike shield. Lay on, Macduff, and damned be him that first cries, 'Hold, enough!'" The two men clashed once more, their swords singing a deadly duet. The air crackled with the promise of change, the fate of a kingdom hanging in the balance. As the alarum sounded and the battle raged on, the seeds of a new era were sown in blood and valour. To 5, Part 4. In the dim glow of the dawn breaking over the Scottish hills, the battleground stood silent and still, save for the gentle rustling of banners in the wind. The air was heavy with the mingling scents of victory and loss. Malcolm, the rightful heir to the throne, stood amid the gathering of his loyal supporters, their ranks bolstered by the noble Siward, the steadfast Ross, and an array of thanes and soldiers. The drums beat a rhythmic thrum, echoing the heartbeat of a nation on the cusp of renewal. Malcolm scanned the horizon, his eyes filled with a mix of triumph and concern. "I wish our missing friends were safely here," he voiced, his brow furrowing slightly. Seward, a seasoned warrior whose very presence commanded respect, nodded solemnly. "Some must go off," he acknowledged, his gaze sweeping over the scene of hard-won peace. "And yet, by these I see so great a day as this is cheaply bought." Malcolm turned, his expression softening with gratitude. "Macduff is missing, and your noble son," he said, looking to Seward with a hint of apprehension. Ross, stepping forward with the weight of news, met Seward's eyes. "Your son, my lord, has paid a soldier's debt," he announced, each word carrying the weight of both honour and finality. "He only lived but till he was a man, the which no sooner had his prowess confirmed in the unshrinking station where he fought, but like a man he died." Seward's heart clenched, but he stood tall. "Then he is dead?" he asked, the words steady, though his heart felt the loss deeply. "Aye," Ross confirmed, his voice steady yet respectful, "and brought off the field. Your cause of sorrow must not be measured by his worth, for then it hath no end." Seward, his resolve as unyielding as the mountains, asked, "Had he his hurts before?" Ross nodded, confirming, "Aye, on the front." A flicker of pride crossed Seward's face, mingling with grief. "Why then God's soldier be he. Had I as many sons as I have hairs, I would not wish them to a fairer death, and so his knell is knolled." Malcolm, witnessing the exchange, spoke with sincerity. "He's worth more sorrow, and that I'll spend for him." But Seward, ever the stoic, shook his head. "He's worth no more. They say he parted well and paid his score, and so God be with him." His words were like a benediction, granting his son the peace of a warrior's rest. Just then, the atmosphere shifted as Macduff entered the scene, his presence commanding attention. In his grasp was the ultimate symbol of their victory, Macbeth's severed head. The usurper's reign had ended, and with it, the chains binding Scotland. "Hail, King, for so thou art," Macduff proclaimed, his voice carrying the weight of justice served. "Behold where stands the usurper's cursed head, the time is free." Malcolm, a figure of destiny surrounded by the finest of Scotland's noblemen, felt the tide of history turning. "I see thee compassed with thy kingdom's pearl," Macduff continued, gesturing to the assembled men who had fought for this moment, "that speak my salutation in their minds, whose voices I desire aloud with mine. Hail, King of Scotland!" And as if the very heavens joined in their celebration, the chorus of voices rose in unison, echoing with power and promise. "Hail, King of Scotland!" they declared, the flourish of trumpets underscoring the dawn of a new era. Malcolm, now King of Scotland, surveyed the faces of those who stood with him, each a testament to loyalty and courage. "We shall not spend a large expense of time before we reckon with your several loves," he promised, his voice resolute yet warm, "and make us even with you. My thanes and kinsmen henceforth be earls, the first that ever Scotland in such an honour named." The promise of a brighter future shimmered in the air, each word a seed planted in the fertile soil of hope. "What's more to do," Malcolm continued, "which would be planted newly with the time, as calling home our exiled friends abroad, that fled the snares of watchful tyranny, producing forth the cruel ministers of this dead butcher, and his fiend-like queen who, as 'tis thought, by self and violent hands took off her life." With each declaration, the burdens of the past began to lift, replaced by the lightness of possibilities yet to come. This, and what needful else that calls upon us by the grace of grace, we will perform in measure, time, and place, Malcolm vowed, his words a contract of renewal. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light upon the land, Malcolm turned to those who had made this day possible. So thanks to all at once and to each one whom we invite to see us crowned at Scone, he concluded, a smile breaking through the solemnity. And with that, as the music swelled and the soldiers cheered, they began to move, a collective force of change, marching inexorably toward a future bright with promise and peace. The echoes of their victory, like the notes of a song, would linger long in the hearts of the people, a testament to the power of justice, courage, and hope. As the echoes of the Scottish moorlands fade and the whispers of destiny fall silent, the tale of Macbeth closes its pages. Yet, in the wake of ambition's ruin, we are left pondering the timeless dance between fate and free will. Macbeth's rise and fall, painted with the vivid strokes of Shakespeare's pen, remind us of the perils of unchecked ambition and the haunting call of prophecy. In this tale, where shadows play upon the stage of human desire, we witness the unravelling of noble intentions and the dark allure of power. The witch's cryptic prophecies, Lady Macbeth's relentless drive, and Macbeth's own tragic flaws weave a tapestry that captivates and warns. As you emerge from this story, perhaps a question lingers. What would you do in the face of prophecy? Would you embrace it or defy it? These are the questions that have echoed through time, inviting each listener to ponder their own path. If you've enjoyed this journey through the halls of Dunsinane, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more tales from the world's greatest storytellers to life, and we'd love to hear from you. Comment below and let us know what book you'd like us to narrate next. Until then, may your own stories be rich with adventure and wisdom.